Chapter 1559. Koju felt a deep sense of uneasiness, but this was understandable. It was his bad luck to meet a weirdo like Vatler. Koju suddenly regretted becoming the fourth true ancestor. After breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a true ancestor, his miserable life gradually began and didn't end. He was always being ridiculed without restraint, especially Dustless. What was the most unacceptable was that now it was Vatler's turn to be ridiculed. This guy didn't put him, the fourth true ancestor, in his eyes at all. Don't force me, Humph, we'll all die together. Koju swore in his heart that he would rather die than live in dishonor. He couldn't tolerate Vatler's nonsense. Huh. Dustless stared at the girl in front of him. He felt like there was something wrong with his ears. Did I hear wrong? You want to ally with me to deal with the mortal Wuxia? Dustless repeated Yuma's words and asked in disbelief. Are you sure you want to deal with your mother? You don't believe me? Yuma frowned. That's not it. Wuchen shook his head like a rattledrum and said bluntly, I always feel that the change is too fast. After all, we were still enemies dozens of minutes ago. Suddenly, we jumped into a trench to deal with her. I always feel a little strange. It's a bit sudden, but I'm serious. Yuma had a serious expression and said, I want my freedom. In order to get rid of immortal Wuxia, I have to keep her locked up. Are you talking about keeping her in prison? You won't get such good treatment in the future. Dustless shook his head and said, there are only two paths waiting for immortal Wuxia. One is to go to hell, and the other is to completely obey my orders. How could there be such a good thing in the world if he wanted to continue living in prison? Not a chance. In any case, let's go find Natsuki first. With that, Dustless and Yuma left together. Yuma's destination was Koju's house. Dustless lived next door to Koju's house, so it was on the way. You want to tame Mother? No, you want to tame immortal Wuxia as your subordinate? Yuma asked in disbelief. Can you tell me the reason? Of course you can refuse, I'm just asking out of curiosity. This planet is just a fart. The primogenitors have already divided it. Also, I don't like obeying orders, so I have to find a place to build my empire. I don't think immortal Wuxia is qualified as a fighter. If she is willing to submit, there will naturally be a happy ending. If she refuses, we can only send her to heaven. Dustless went straight to the point and did not conceal in the slightest. You want to take Itagami of this island for yourself? Yuma asked in shock. Other than Itagami Island, there didn't seem to be any other good place in this world. Why can't I? Dustless retorted and sneered at Yuma. You're worried about Koju, right? Do you think he's suitable to be a primogenito? Well, Yuma fell silent. No matter how she looked at it, Koju wasn't suitable to be a primogenitor. Be it in terms of strength or other aspects, he was far from being a primogenitor. There's another big problem. If I remember correctly, that guy was captured by Vatler. What do you think will happen when a gentle sheep is captured by a hungry tiger? I hope that kid doesn't get devoured. I remember Vatler professing his love to Koju. Maybe Koju really did get influenced by Vatler. Dustless laughed in schadenfreude. Vatler, on the other hand, had the attribute of being gay. Impossible. Yuma retorted with a red face. Who knows? Wuchen shrugged his shoulders. When he was about to turn his head and leave, he suddenly noticed that the corner of his clothes was pulled, and there was also a subtle voice. Dad. Although the voice was as soft as a mosquito's and could be ignored, Wuchen, who had a keen sense of hearing, still heard it clearly. Immediately, he was extremely depressed. Just whose family did this brat come from? When did I have another daughter? Puzzled, he looked behind him and saw a young girl of a few years old. Her appearance was perfect. Her big eyes were like gemstones embedded in her eye sockets. Her beautiful black hair was hanging on her waist. Her round eyes were innocently staring at Wuchen. Yuma stared at Dustless in disbelief. She didn't expect him to have a child. Don't misunderstand, I don't have a child. Hearing this, Wuchen hurriedly denied. Damn, this super big black hole can't be carried casually. Maybe there will be a big problem. I know. Yuma nodded. She had investigated Dustless's background. He wasn't even married, let alone having a child. He didn't even have a girlfriend. Dad. The young girl pitifully tugged at Wu Chen's clothes and pointed to the candy store next to them. She looked up at Wu Chen with her innocent eyes. Her intention was self-evident. She licked her lips covetously. This girl, she can't be her, right? Squatting down, he was surprised to find that the girl in front of him was very familiar. After looking at her carefully, Wu Chen felt that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. He was very surprised and said gloomily, "Isn't this Nangong Natsuki? The world is so small. I didn't take the initiative to look for you and you came knocking on my door." Chapter 1560. Dustless was in a daze. He thought it would take a lot of time to find Natsuki. He didn't expect her to take the initiative and even call him dad. In all fairness, Dustless's brain was not enough to process all of this. What are you going to do with her? Yuma frowned and asked. From Natsuki's innocent eyes, it was clear that she had lost her memory. The real Natsuki was always domineering. Let's bring her back for now. Dustless sighed with a headache. He could only take her home for now. If he let her walk on the streets, she would be killed by the prisoners in the prison. Cough, cough, cough. Dustless coughed awkwardly and squatted down. He looked at Natsuki's innocent eyes and grabbed her hand. It's getting late, Dad will take you home. No. Natsuki broke free from Dustless's hand. Even though the warmth made her feel comfortable, she still stubbornly said, I want to eat candy. Is this person really Natsuki Nangong? Although she is also very willful, only someone with a brain would make such a request. Dustless bitterly smiled and finally gave in. He raised a finger and said seriously, You have to go home in 10 minutes. Dad is the best. Nangong Nayu immediately smiled and did not hesitate to carve a bite on Wu Chen's face. This girl. Dustless was stunned. He looked at Natsuki in a daze. He was a bit surprised by this sudden action, but this was not something to be happy about. If Natsuki regained her memory and came to find trouble with him, then he would be in trouble. Let's go buy candy for her first. Glancing at Shindu Muyuma, Wu Chen also followed. Immortal City Muyuma hesitated for a few seconds, then gritted her teeth and followed. If she wanted to send Immortal City Muai back to hell, she had to borrow Dustless's power. Natsuki was given 10 minutes to shop in the supermarket, but in reality, it was more than an hour. After all, it was a woman's nature to shop. When they came out of the supermarket, Dustless's hands were filled with bags of various sizes. Really, I didn't expect to buy so many things. Shindu Muyuma glanced at the lively Natsuki and was speechless. Miss Shindumu, do you have the right to talk about her? Dustless couldn't help but complain. 1/3 of the bag in his hand was Immortal Wood Yuma's. Can the two of you hand over the children in your hands to me? A hoarse voice came from behind, as terrifying as a poisonous snake's tongue. That sudden killing intent caused the surrounding temperature to drop to an unimaginable freezing point. There are indeed a lot of fish that escaped the net. Dustless turned his head to reveal half of his eyes and sized up the person who had suddenly appeared. He was surprised to find that he actually knew this person. An old spirit summoner from the guerrilla army of the Middle East Kabristan. A monster that was implanted with the flame spirit spell. 6 years ago, he attempted to cause a terrorist attack on Itagami Island and was sent to the prison barrier. Recalling the bald old man's information, Dustless concluded, You are Kilika, right? Look at your pitiful appearance. I can't bear to kill you. Can't you find a place where no one is around and die peacefully? Living in obscurity while at death's door suits you. Cough, cough, cough. Kilika coughed twice as if he was having asthma. Then he said fanatically, I'm very happy that you are considerate of me. But I still have a stage in this world. I can't sink into oblivion. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless's face turned as cold as a snowstorm. He revealed his killing intent and sneered coldly. You're already so old, yet you still don't repent and want to keep up with the times. You're quite ambitious. Unfortunately, the world is only so big, I alone am enough. You clowns can all go to hell. Swish. Swish. Kusanagi. Puchi. Swish. 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 Amaterasu. The old man's body burned with Amaterasu, turning his corpse into ashes. This happened very quickly. Due to the cold night, there weren't many people on the streets, so no one saw it. It's going to be very difficult to kill this guy. High up on the rooftop, the cold wind was blowing. A black figure was faintly discernible in the night, almost blending into the darkness. If she hadn't taken the initiative to speak, even if someone passed by, they wouldn't have noticed her presence. This person was Immortal Muai. She revealed a grave expression, and her crystalline eyes were filled with caution. Kilika was merely a bait sent by her, or a test stone to test Dustless's strength. But Immortal Muai helplessly realized that her thoughts were too naive. She didn't even know how Dustless killed him. Swish. Swish. While Immortal Muai was thinking about how to deal with Dustless, a sharp sound broke through the air, and she quickly realized that a cold light had locked onto her. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His body turned into a gust of wind, and Immortal Capital Muai dodged to the side without hesitation. Boom boom boom. As the purple light approached, the place where Xiandu Muai was standing immediately turned into a huge pit. Her eyes like spring water, swept over. In the darkness, a golden silhouette appeared. Celestial Muai was quite surprised. She had never met this person before. Immortal Capital Wood Ayi. We can work together for once. Chapter 1561. Work together? Xiandu Muai opened her mouth and let out an ear-piercing laugh. Her eyes were filled with anger and hostility. Her killing intent locked onto the invading blonde man. Vatler. She stared at the blonde man for a while, and found that he was not hostile towards her. Xiandu Muai felt strange, but she retracted her anger. Work together with you? What a joke. What's the difference between that and setting myself on fire? Xiandu Muai asked coldly. You're different from Dustless. Compared to him, I think you're more dangerous. I'm more dangerous than him? Hearing this, Vatler's face was filled with interest and surprise. He always thought he was not as good as Dustless. Vatler asked curiously. Why don't you tell me? Are you sure you want to hear? Her beautiful purple eyes flashed with ridicule. Immortal Wood Aya's beautiful voice was like the sound of nature. At this moment, there was only ridicule left. Of course. Vatler nodded. I also want to hear how I'm better than him. To be honest, I've always thought I'm not as good as him. Xiandu Muai had to be direct. You're more cunning than him. You're a smiling tiger. You can turn hostile at any time. Vatler's mouth twitched. Was that a compliment? Bullshit. It was a blatant mockery, mocking Vatler's moodiness. All in all, that guy is my enemy and your enemy. Do you have the confidence to fight him alone? Vatler asked. By the way, I forgot to tell you that guy has a bunch of beautiful subordinates. Your daughter, Xiandu Muyuma, seems to have joined the fight against you. Okay, let's work together this time. Left with no choice, Xiandu Muai could only agree to this unreliable alliance. After all, what Vatler said was the truth. I extracted information about the Book of Darkness from Natsuki's memories. I can use this chance to test it and use it as a trump card against Dustless. In the brightly lit room, Dustless and the others finally returned home. Jijua Shelley and Kajisaka Sayaka had been waiting for him for a long time. Of course, there was also a special and unexpected person, Xiao Nagisa, Koja's biological sister. This fellow's consciousness should be Daybreak Nagisa. Aurora seems to still be in a deep slumber. After discovering that this guy wouldn't go berserk, Dustless felt relieved. In such a narrow space, although it wouldn't be a big deal if Aurora were to cause trouble, Dustless wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Is something the matter, Miss Nagisa? After they entered the room, Dustless lazily laid on the sofa and casually said, Your brother Koju is in big trouble. Boom boom boom. Dustless's words were even more effective than an elixir. The moment he finished his sentence, Xiao Nagsha's entire body emitted a vast amount of cold energy. The entire living room was instantly covered in ice and snow. Ah, how terrifying. Dustless pretended to be afraid and continued to provoke her. Koju was captured by Vatler. I don't think I need to explain it to you. Agurola. There was no doubt that Aurora's consciousness had taken over this body. Your information is very useful. I will remember your kindness this time. After saying this, Don Nagisa's body condensed into ice and left. Ah. When a woman gets angry, it's really scary. Dustless laughed at Vatler's misfortune. He was sure that Vatler was out of luck. Agurora valued Koju a lot, and had helped him time and time again. He had even warned Vatler before, but judging from the current situation, Agurora's warning was useless. Vatler had crossed the line and crossed Agurora's bottom line. Senior, are you still in the mood to laugh? Jijua Shelley stared at Dustless and complained. The space of the entire Itagami Island has been twisted. It's almost a mess. Not to mention ordinary human beings and demons. Even we are affected. That's right. We need to catch that detestable criminal as soon as possible. Huangban Sayaka also said loudly. You. Hearing this, Wu Chen stared at the two people strangely. When he was about to open his mouth to speak, a soft body suddenly threw itself into his arms. Daddy, I want to sleep. The little girl Natsuki blinked her eyes. She was no longer as bright as before. Instead, she looked very tired. She didn't care if Dustless agreed or not. She found a spot in Dustless's arms and closed her eyes. Senior, you have a daughter? Jijua looked at Dustless in shock. Humph. Huangban Sayaka snorted proudly. She curled her lips and said disdainfully. I told you, staying under the same roof with this guy will make you pregnant. It's normal to have a child. You two misunderstood. Seeing that Jijua Shelley and Huangban Sayaka had misunderstood, Yuma stepped out to help Dustless. This little girl is actually Nangong Natsuki from Saikai Academy. Impossible. Both of them exclaimed. Natsuki was also short, but not as short as this little kid. Even though they looked almost the same. It's like this. Shindumu Yuma could only tell him everything that had happened. Wu Chen remained silent on the sofa. The dark world was mixed with a mysterious purple light. He knew that this was Shindumu Ice Trick, the ability of the Book of Darkness. Let's see what's different about you. About an hour later, Dustless coaxed Nadanyu to sleep, and left to find trouble with Immortal City Muayi. This farce has been going on for so long, it was time to end it. Chapter 1562. At the top of Saikai Academy, a dark purple light shrouded the entire place. Immortal Muaaya stood there, and looked at the familiar building. She couldn't help but feel emotional after 10 years. She stood there in a daze. Yo. Miss Shindumu, now is not the time for you to wallow in sadness. Hurry up and deactivate this ridiculous ability. Itagami Island is already a mess. I plan to use this place as the base for my empire of nothingness. It will be bad if you destroy it. A frivolous and lazy voice sounded. It was as weak as a breeze and did not have any deterrence. However, Immortal City Muayi, who had recovered from his trance, felt his heart tremble fiercely. His eyes widened to their widest extent in his life. Impossible. Immortal Muaaya screamed in disbelief. The Dark Oath Scroll's ability has been activated. Other than me, no one else on Itagami Island can use their abilities. How are you still able to fly? More than 100% of the people on the island were the same. Why is Dustless the exception? This doesn't make sense. Dark Oath Scroll. Dustless wasn't fazed by her words. He sighed in his mind. As expected, the interior of Saikai Academy's building was replaced by all sorts of mysterious runes. It was because of these runes that the entire island turned into a unique domain. No ability can be used here. Of course, there was one exception. Immortal Muaaya was unaffected by this unique domain. She could still use her abilities. Only the others were restricted. Sorry, there are exceptions to everything. You are an exception and so am I. Glancing at Yuma, Dustless said indifferently. I don't know what you mean by all abilities can't be used. Maybe it will work for me. However, I don't know how many abilities I have. Maybe they have been banned, but I haven't realized it yet. I have too many abilities. I don't know how many I have, so you don't need to worry. You. Immortal Muaaya's face twitched. She felt like her intelligence was insulted by Dustless. What do you mean by, I have too many abilities? Is there anything more arrogant than that? He was simply asking for a beating. In short, submit to me or die. Which will you choose? Dustless waved his hand, not bothering to waste any more words. If it weren't for the fact that her Book of Darkness was quite powerful, he would have already killed Immortal Mua Yi. How arrogant! Immortal Wood Yi glared at Dustless with an unfriendly gaze, his tone revealing a hint of contempt. You want me to subdue you? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Just as he finished speaking, a steel knight appeared behind Immortal Capital Mua Yi. In the end, you're still going to settle it with your fists? With a sigh, Dustless could not help but feel a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would not have wasted so much time talking to a woman like Immortal Mua Yi. Don't care about anything else, just beat her into submission. Swish. Swish. Dustless transformed into a black shadow and pounced out. The surroundings were deathly silent. There was no other enemy. Without a doubt, this enemy could only be Xian Du Mua Yi. You're courting death. Immortal Capital Mua Yi's face turned cold, looking at Dustless's outrageous actions. Her calm state of mind inevitably gushed out some flames. This guy really looks down on people too much. Dustless actually wants to fight with her bare-handed, naked contempt. Whoosh! Her slender fingers gently waved, and the steel shadow behind her swept straight out, and the cold gleaming long sword also mercilessly slashed at Dustless. Could bare-handed humans withstand the sharp blades and shadows of swords? Of course it's impossible. Immortal Capital Mua Yi finally let out a carefree laugh. If you can break my guardian knight, then I will submit to you. Immortal Capital Mua Yi pursed her lips, and the smile on her beautiful face did not seem to be a joke. However, after a few seconds, she suddenly regretted it. Then you are destined to become a dog. Dustless's eyes were like torches, and his right fist had been gently raised, and covered with a layer of invincible sharpness, and whispered, Armament Hockey Hardening. Shatter. Looking at the steel momentum close at hand, Dustless mercilessly punched out. Boom. The dull explosion spread out, and it was as terrible as the sound of thunder, followed by countless ka-ka-ka sounds. And under the stunned gaze of Immortal Capital Mua Yi, the guardian she trusted instantly disintegrated. This is too fragile. Immortal Capital Mua Yi turned her head and couldn't bear to look directly. She was afraid that she would be depressed and vomit blood. It was strange that a human's fist could be so heaven-defying. As you can see, I broke your broken copper and iron guardian with one punch. Now please fulfill your promise, Miss Immortal Capital Mu. Dustless seriously stared at Immortal Capital Mua Yi, whose face was full of unhappiness, and whispered, Of course your head is on your head. Even if you want to go back on your words, I can't do anything. Well, I will fulfill my promise, but the gem-like gorgeous purple eyes flashed with a sly light, and Immortal Capital Mua Yi proudly said, I said before that I was willing to submit to you, but I didn't say that I will obey your orders now, and I will submit to you after 100 years. Hearing this, Dustless stared at her blankly and asked lightly, Are you going to play word games with me? Then, I also take back my previous promise, and I have changed my mind. With a fierce smile, Dustless's eyes flashed fiercely. Since gentle means don't work, I will beat you until you complain. This is your own fault. Chapter 1563. Dustless's chilling smile was filled with boundless savagery. His glowing red eyes made Celestial Wood Aye's heart skip a beat. Cold sweat dripped down her forehead like raindrops. Celestial Wood Aye could feel the frigid air around her. It was so cold that she felt uncomfortable. She could even see ice shards in the air. They were all frozen by Dustless's murderous aura. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Immortal Mu Ye's expression was slightly flustered. She realized that because Wu Chen's aura was too strong, it made it difficult for her to move. It was as if she had entered a gravitational field. Even moving her body was extremely strenuous. That majestic pressure pressed down on her bones, making her dizzy and unable to breathe. If the devil race and magic are heresy, then this guy is also heresy. He's the heresy of heresy. Immortal Wood Aye looked at Wu Chen, who was slowly walking over, and felt powerless. Shadow. Celestial Wood Aye muttered. The metal monster that was shattered earlier appeared again. It looked at Dustless coldly. Its body was emitting a bone-chilling aura. Under the control of its mind, it charged at Dustless again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black shadow charged at her at lightning speed. Celestial Wood, Yi could only see a blurry shadow. She wanted to see Dustless's head separated from his body. But she was destined to be disappointed. Crack, crack, crack. At the same time, the entire island started to shake violently. The large island started to sink slowly. Some parts of the shore were already corroded by the seawater. Dense seawater continued to spread towards the center of the island. This Dark Oath scroll is indeed extraordinary. It can nullify all supernatural abilities and magic. The curse that created Itagami Island belongs to this category as well. I'm afraid it won't be long before the Book of Dark Oath dispels the curse, and this island will sink. Immortal City Muayi is a super genius. To be able to dispel all kinds of supernatural abilities and spells, TSK. Impressive. Dustless lowered his head and gave Yi a few admiring glances. As for whether she was a good person or a bad person, Dustless didn't care. It was just an insignificant question. There was no such thing as good or evil in this world. Everyone only had different standpoints and beliefs. In other words, the victor was the righteous one. Shindu Muayi was judged as evil because she lost to Namiko Natsuki. Therefore the winner, Namiko Natsuki, was righteous. Success. Immortal City Muayi was overjoyed and clenched her fists. Celestial Wood Aye's Iron Knight, Shadow, was closing in on Dustless. Just as he was about to raise his sword and kill him, Dustless was still standing there in a daze. His eyes flashed with a strange light from time to time, as if he had found something interesting. Die. With a shout, Immortal Muayi's eyes were filled with killing intent. At the same time, Shadow's sharp blade swept towards Dustless's neck. Such a powerful person is dead. What a pity. Sighing, Immortal City Muayi's eyes dimmed a little. She felt sorry for the death of a rabbit. After all, Dustless was a peerless genius just like her. Poochie. The sound of a body being cut apart was heard. It was very simple. There was no obstruction at all. It ends here. Sighing in relief, Immortal City Muayi muttered to herself. I can't forgive this crazy world. Those who look down on the witch are all guilty. Looking around, the entire Itagami Island was in her sight. Immortal City Muayi continued to mutter to herself. Now is the time to rewrite this world. Itagami Island is only the first step to redemption. I say, are you sick in the head? Your enemy is still standing here, and you want to rewrite the world. What a joke. It's not impossible to change the world, but you should at least worry about your own safety. The owner of this voice was as terrifying as a natural enemy of immortal capital Muayi. Her calm and indifferent expression instantly changed to one of fear and shock. Turning his head with great difficulty, the scene that entered his eyes caused Shindu Muayi's pupils to shrink. He originally thought that Wu Chen was dead, but he was actually alive and well. There was not a single scratch on him. How did this guy do it? Why did all the aptitude users on Itagami Island lose their abilities and mana? How did he break this iron law? Immortal City Muyuma stomped her feet in anger. Encountering something that she couldn't understand, she couldn't help but feel frustrated. Her calm mind was stirred up. Is that the Dark Oath book? Looking at the ancient book in Immortal City Muyuma's hand, Dustless immediately snatched it. Wanxiang Heaven's Pull. The sudden appearance of the gravitational force caught Shindu Muayi off guard. Before he could react, the Dark Oath book in his hand disappeared. He could only watch it leave him, unable to react. Game over. His heart that was hanging in the air calmly fell to the ground. Wu Chen quietly stared at the unwilling Immortal Wood Yi and explained faintly, "You may not be able to understand why I can ignore the ability of this technique." That's right. Immortal City Muayi nodded stiffly. She stared at Dustless, waiting for a reasonable answer. All the aptitude users and mana users on Itagami Island were affected by the Dark Oath book. Why are you unaffected? You have to give a reasonable explanation. First, after organizing his thoughts, Dustless said in a deep voice, "It doesn't matter if you can understand it or not, you have to understand it. No matter what kind of ability it is, it's nothing in front of absolute power. Secondly, I'm not a native of this world. This might be the reason why the Dark Oath book can't affect me. Also, I don't know anything about magic, So how can it be nullified? You want to use a stupid book to limit my power? Those aptitude users that I killed are going to cry. Chapter 1564. When these words fell, Immortal Muaye's face was particularly colorful. Green, white, black, green. Her face was changing colors. There were only things that she could not think of and nothing that she could not see. Wu Chen's words really made her choke. What kind of answer is this? In Immortal City Wudaye's ears, it was all nonsense without any basis or reason. What do you mean I'm not a person of this world? Were they looking down on the rest of the planet for being natives? Forget it, it's useless to say it. As a mortal, you won't understand what I mean. Dustless shook his head. He didn't want to waste time on this small issue. Don't think you've won. I still have some tricks up my sleeve. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Immortal City Wudaye's delicate face twisted. Her tone revealed her determination. It seemed like she wanted to die together with Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then under Dustless's gaze, her body burned with purple flames. With Immortal City Wudaye as the center, the flames gradually engulfed her body. This is, Dustless frowned. This scene, there was some familiar information in his mind. However, he couldn't remember what it was called. This is the so-called fallen soul. Offering your soul to the devil, and then turning into a real devil. The true form of a witch. In short, she's crazy. A pleasant but nervous voice sounded. Dustless turned around and saw Immortal City Wudaye Jijua, Shelley, Huangbenxia Yaka, Nangong Natsuki and the others. Haha. You're all here. Immortal City Wudaye's pleasant voice sounded. It was completely different from the pure voice from before. This time, there was a hint of a devil's seductiveness. Ayi, why did you do this? Nangong Natsuki had obviously recovered her memory. However, her height was not restored. Her proud face had a complicated expression. The two of them had a good relationship in the past. They could be called best friends. Why? Immortal City Wudaye revealed a hateful smile and said loudly, "This world is wrong. Magic and the devil race, these things don't exist at all. What crime have I committed by restoring this world to its original state?" While there were still two consciousnesses, Immortal Muayi continued, "But it's all because of this hateful guy. He ruined all my plans. I was just following orders. Seriously, I got shot even when I was lying down." Dustless shrugged helplessly. Looking at the completely demonized Immortal Capital Muayi, he said softly, "Shelley, I'll leave the rest to you." Hand it over to her? Nangong Nayu and the others were stunned when they heard this. They looked at Dustless in confusion. His raised lips were filled with confidence. "Is there a way to save a Yi?" Nangong Nayu was the first to ask. No matter what, Immortal Capital Muayi was her close friend, and had the responsibility to save her. What Celestial Wudaye said before is trustworthy. It's not as unreasonable as you think. Dustless rarely jumped to Immortal Capital Muaye's side. He analyzed wisely. If it's as she said, Immortal Capital Muaye can be saved. But I can't. I can kill one person, but saving her, that's not my strong point. I need Shelley. Dustless looked at Jijua Shelley and smiled. Type 7 Assault Demon Subduing Machine Gun, Snow Cloud Wolf. This is a gun that can restore the world. If it's Shelley, she should be able to do it. Restore the world? Nangong Nayu's face was strange. If this came from Immortal Capital Muayi, it would be normal. But now that it came from Dustless, she felt like Dustless was also brainwashed by Immortal Capital Muayi. Please don't look at me with suspicion. Just try it. Wu Chen continued very casually. Treat it as a last resort. Just take it as a gamble. Anyway, you have no other way to help Immortal Muayi. Are you confident? A transfer student. Nangong Nayu asked expectantly. After all, Immortal Capital Muayi was one of her close friends. She didn't want to see her fall. I'll try my best. Jijua Shelley said she would try her best. She didn't know if the Snow Cloud Wolf could help Immortal Capital Muayi recover. Let me take care of these bastards. Dustless's palm erupted with an almost invincible gravitational force. His right hand suddenly grabbed the void, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Wanxiang heavenly attraction. The ghostly fire around immortal capital Muayi was all sucked in by Dustless's gravitational force. They floated in the void and then boundless black light rapidly attacked. Dao breaking 90 black coffin. Pucci. These pulsating purple balls of light were fatally injured and instantly collapsed. Now only the immortal capital Muayi was left, covered in light. Others might not understand, but Dustless clearly remembered that in the original work, Ji Mo Shuelai had used the snow cloud wolf to save immortal Muayi from the gates of hell. That's about it. Dustless glanced at Ji Zhuosheli. His meaning was self-evident. I understand, senior. After calming down, Ji Zhuosheli held the long spear and flew toward immortal capital Muayi. The snow cloud wolf in her hand emitted a piercing halo. The son of Bayan and the god of sword sorcerer is here to pray. Dawn of demon breaking, snow cloud wolf, quickly use the power of the god of steel to help me destroy the evil gods and demons. After the chant, Ji Zhuosheli jumped up and the snow cloud wolf's tip had already landed on immortal capital Muayi. Crack! Suddenly, a crisp sound like a mirror shattering was heard. The light covering immortal capital Muayi's body was completely retracted. Her unharmed body was exposed in front of everyone. Chapter 1565. This unbelievable turn of events stunned everyone, especially Ji Zhuosheli. She blushed in embarrassment. The Snow Dawn Wolf was her weapon, and she didn't know it as well as an outsider. Thinking of Ji Zhuosheli's face blushed with embarrassment. You can even understand this kind of thing. Who exactly are you? Immortal Muayi opened her eyes with difficulty, her gem-like eyes staring at Dustless. I'm just an ordinary person who can't be more ordinary. Dustless casually said perfunctorily. You should be convinced now. You only have yourself to blame for falling into such a state. Alright, you can reflect in prison, Yi. Nangong Nayu said indifferently. She waved her hand, and a purple magic formation appeared in the air. Countless chains shot out and circled around immortal Wood Yi. I have to go back again? God is so unfair. Immortal Wood Yi smiled bitterly. She just came out for a breath of fresh air, and was about to be locked up again. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, Dustless suddenly coughed and winked at immortal Wood Yi. He smiled maliciously and looked like he wanted her to beg for his help. Do I really have to bow to this guy? But if I refuse, I'll have to return to that prison barrier where I can't see anyone. The immortal city Muayi's mind spun quickly. She clenched her tender fists tightly as a troubled expression appeared on her face. No one wished to become someone else's underling. Even though Wu Chen's display of strength made immortal Muayi prostrate herself in admiration, it did not mean that she could become Wu Chen's underling without any grudges. I promise you. After immortal city Muayi pondered for a while, she finally chose to collude with Silver Wolf. There was no other way. She had stayed in that dark enchantment for a full 10 years, and did not want to continue living like the end of the world. What did she promise you? Nangong Nayu pointed at immortal Wood Yi and asked unkindly. She felt uneasy. She's going to be my follower. Dustless said as if that was how it should be. He walked up to immortal Wood Yi and healed her. He smiled gently and said, Your injury is just a small matter. We have the same idea. We can work together. Advance hand in hand? Nangong Natsuki's eyelids jumped. She glared at Dustless and said, Be your subordinate? Did I allow it? Dustless stopped dreaming. Yi is just a criminal. He can't be your subordinate. Also, your boss is called Nangong Natsuki. In other words, no matter what, you won't let them go? Dustless faintly stared at Natsuki Nangong, his eyes clearly changing. You want to make a move against me? Nangong Natsuki asked while clenching her teeth. She secretly cursed Dustless for being bewitched by a fox. Internal strife? This is interesting. Immortal Capital Yi looked at the two of them with interest. Ripples appeared in the depths of her eyes as she glanced back and forth between Dustless and Nangong Natua. I won't fight you, but... Dustless smiled calmly. I will leave Itagami Island. You. Natsuki Nangong glared at Dustless. This guy is doing this on purpose. Because of Dustless, Itagami Island can't afford to offend big shots like Vatler and the first primogenitor of the War Monarch's territory. If Dustless loses this nuclear weapon or leaves Itagami Island, those big shots will have nothing to worry about. They might even cause trouble for Itagami Island. On purpose. Natsuki Nangong glared at Dustless angrily. She wanted to swallow this brat alive. She knew Itagami Island's predicament and did this on purpose. Amazing. Immortal Capital Muayi was impressed. She looked at Natsuki Nangong. Natsuki's helpless expression. Dustless can live comfortably without Itagami Island. However, Itagami Island is different. They offended a lot of big shots because of Dustless. If Dustless leaves, those big shots might come for revenge. You win. After a few seconds of silence, Natsuki Nangong Natsuki sighed. She lowered her head and compromised. I will tell the people in the commune what you want. But you have to keep an eye on Yi. She is very dangerous. No problem. Wu Chen patted his chest and nodded with a smile. Dustless and Immortal Capital Muayi walked side by side on the street. Why are you so obsessed with me? I might think that I'm a genius, but I don't seem to be of any use to you. Immortal Capital Muayi expressed her doubts. She couldn't understand why Dustless valued her. Miss Immortal Capital Mu, you don't have to belittle yourself. Dustless shook his head. He didn't doubt Immortal Capital Muayi's ability. Can you use your Dark Oath scroll again? Dustless asked expectantly. Immortal Capital Muayi fell silent and nodded. This kind of small matter was nothing to her. She replied calmly. Of course. Is that so? I didn't misjudge you. Dustless kept her in suspense and smiled mysteriously. I want you to go to Europe and use your Dark Oath scroll in War Monarch's domain to strip all vampires of their abilities. War Monarch's domain? Immortal Capital Muayi was stunned. What do you want to do to War Monarch's domain? If you get caught, it will be the same as declaring war on them. Didn't I say it before? This world has limited territory, and there are too many vampires and primogenitors. It's hard to rule. I can be the strongest in this world. That's why there are so many rewritten maps. Chapter 1566. Hearing Wu Chen's deranged thoughts, Immortal Muayi was dumbstruck, and his mind went blank for a moment. Although he had heard that Wu Chen and the War King domain had many conflicts, he never thought that this guy would be so daring. You're not going to start a war with the first true ancestor, are you? Also, don't tell me that I'm the only subordinate you're talking about right now. Immortal Muayi asked with a dark face. You're really smart. I didn't misjudge you. You're my only subordinate. Dustless was surprised. He didn't expect Immortal Muayi to figure it out. This woman was really smart. Pfft. Immortal Muayi couldn't take it anymore. She rolled her eyes and spat out blood. This guy didn't feel ashamed. He was actually proud. The two of us can fight against the true ancestors? Immortal Muayi's mouth twitched. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? Of the four true ancestors, other than Koju, the other true ancestors all had powerful forces. The most powerful country on this planet was the true ancestors' Empire of Darkness. Fight! Dustless glanced at the shocked Immortal Muayi and said, You're overestimating them. This is just a boring one-sided battle. Please don't overestimate those vampire bats. Vampire bats? Immortal Muayi was depressed. Although she felt that the name vampire bats was quite suitable for vampires. Actually, I'm the same as you. The existence of the so-called demons in this world is completely unnecessary. This planet is pitifully small and has limited resources. The true ancestor's existence is completely unnecessary. Dustless didn't hide his purpose and said, So, it's better to get rid of the vampires as soon as possible. But can the two of us do it? That's impossible. Immortal Muayi said bitterly. At the same time, she understood why Dustless wanted to rope her in. She went straight to the point. Even if I use the Dark Oath book to remove all the abilities of the Battle Monarch domain, I can't destroy them in a short time. Plus, the Battle Monarch domain has a huge range. It's impossible to use the Dark Oath book to cover all the territories. It doesn't matter, as long as we cover their capital. Dustless chuckled, revealing an unexpectedly profound smile. As long as he could eliminate the abilities of the true ancestors, He could summon meteors from outer space to destroy the Battle Monarch domain. Vampires who had lost their magic were nothing but trash. The next morning, the morning breeze was strong and mighty. Looking from afar, one could see the sparkling and limitless sea. Last night, according to Dustless's plan, Yoshi left Itagami Island early in the morning and headed to Europe's warlord's domain alone. Even though Natsuya noticed that I was gone, she chose to ignore it. Dustless had promised that I would not destroy Itagami Island. Natsuya had no choice but to turn a blind eye. Come to think of it, Koju hasn't returned since he was captured by Vatler. Under the scorching sun, Dustless muttered to himself under the shade of a tree. Koju's mysterious disappearance. Dustless guessed that Vatler had secretly captured him. As for why, Dustless had no idea. Out of humanitarian considerations, Dustless couldn't bear to let Nagisa stay at home alone. So he invited her to stay at his place for a few days. Women are really troublesome creatures. Through the window, Dustless bitterly smiled as he observed the women walking around the shop. That was a lingerie shop. It wasn't appropriate for him to enter. That. A weak voice suddenly came. Wuchen turned his head and looked over. What came into his eyes were two white-haired girls. Their appearance and facial features were extremely exquisite. They were living beauties. Two stunning beauties joined. One of them had a noble and refined temperament. Her entire body exuded a noble aura. Her delicate face was like carved jade, without a trace of flaw. The other one was also a white-haired beauty. She looked at Wu Chun with a somewhat embarrassed expression. Her expression was somewhat timid. The two of them were La Fria and Kanace Cannon. Stop fooling around. I won't choose lingerie for you. Dustless glanced at the two and turned around impolitely. His expression said, I'm a gentleman. You've got the wrong person. What a joke. A man entering a lingerie shop would cause the police to call the police. Really? It's not gentlemanly to refuse a lady's invitation. You're too tasteless. La Fria shook her head and complained. You can't even move in front of a beauty. I'm starting to wonder if you're a man. Sorry, I don't know anything about gentlemanly. I'm just a country bumpkin. Dustless ignored La Fria's complaints. He felt more comfortable sitting down and drinking. That Dustless. A weak voice suddenly sounded. Kanace Cannon mustered her courage and took a step forward. Just as she was about to speak, something unexpected happened. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A series of sharp air-breaking sounds came from afar. Wu Chun frowned slightly and looked up slightly. A slight cold light invaded his eyes. Trying to kill someone in broad daylight. You've got some guts. Dustless looked at the cold light that had locked onto Kanace Cannon, La Fria, and himself. He did not move. He released some of his Ryatsu and an indestructible barrier was formed. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. Bang bang bang. A transparent barrier appeared in an instant, blocking all the incoming cold light. At the same time, a strangely dressed man walked out of the dark alley. Chapter 1567. Dustless frowned as he stared at the person who suddenly appeared in the alley. When he saw the person's attire, he suddenly understood. So it's you. Natsuki called me last night, and said that the sage's spirit blood was stolen by a thief. You must be the idiot in the white shirt and checkered hat. Dustless stared at the person with interest as he pulled Cannon and La Freya behind him. His eyes were as cold as the wind, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped. Creak. Even the green leaves on the trees were frozen and turned into ice. As soon as the wind blew, they withered. Although this guy looks sloppy and lazy most of the time, he is very reliable. La Freya said with a smile. She believed that Dustless was much more reliable than Koju. In the original work, Akatsuki Koju's body would often be controlled by the enemy, or even possessed by the enemy. This kind of bitter thing happened from time to time. Did you say that I am an idiot? When the newcomer heard this, his face flashed with killing intent. His gaze shifted from La Freya and Kanace Cannon to Wu Chun, and a wave of hostility surged out of him. This is blasphemy to the great alchemist. Also, my name is Gong Tenzuka. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, the man turned into a storm and swept over. His right arm suddenly turned into liquid, surging like a stream of water. Then, with a slight movement of the mind of the Tenzuo tribute, it was immediately compressed into a large blade that radiated cold light. Boom boom boom. Gong Tenzuka stomped on the ground, causing the cement floor to crack. He jumped into the air, and used the momentum of the fall to descend from the sky. Cut me in half, trash. Tenzuka Gong's face was twisted like a madman. His expression was like that of an evil ghost. His right hand had turned into a broadsword, and was about to chop Dustless's head. Get out of the way. Witnessing Tenzuka Gong's ferocious and arrogant behavior, especially his cold eyes and murderous aura, it was as if he didn't care how many people he killed. The panicked Canon and La Freya grabbed Wu Chen's arm, and tried to pull him away. However, Dustless's body seemed to be integrated with the earth, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't move him. A clown wants to kill people? Without even looking at Gong Tenzuka, Dustless just sneered. His cold face flashed a playful look, and at the same time, his dry mouth slightly opened. Armament Haki hardening. The head made of flesh and blood immediately changed, and the skin turned into an indestructible helmet, as hard as steel. Clang 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 clang. The broadsword slashed down on Dustless's head with all its might. Immediately, there was the sound of his head collapsing. Countless fragments fell down like dregs. He couldn't be more dead. However, Tenzuo Gong couldn't bring himself to be happy. He hit Wu Chun with all his might, but something unexpected happened instead. Is this guy's head made of diamond? Tenzuka Gong asked, dumbfounded. That broken thing was the broadsword in his hand. Because Dustless's head was too hard, he was not hurt at all. Instead, his weapon was shattered. With your garbage level, you want to fight with me? You're still a few hundred years too early. Dustless said coldly, staring at Gong Tenzuka's abdomen, and a ray of light came out of his fingertips. Laser. The destructive beam shot straight out, and the edge went straight to Gong Tenzuka. Although he was aware of the danger, and chose to temporarily avoid the edge of the light, the speed of the light was too fast for Gong Tenzuka to avoid. Poochie. The light penetrated Gong Tenzuka's body, leaving a big hole in his abdomen, and the wound made people's scalp numb. However, this guy was not affected at all, and he stared at Dustless. It's difficult to kill me, it's even impossible. Gong Tenzuka laughed, and at the same time, he walked to the street lamp on the side of the road, grabbed the metal railing, and with a little force, it liquefied and immediately swallowed into his body. The huge wound on his abdomen also healed. Not bad. Dustless nodded slightly. As long as his body was injured, he could swallow the metal to heal the wound. Such a comprehensive ability was worth it, and perhaps this was Gong Tenzuka's biggest advantage. Hand over the two girls behind you. Glaring at Dustless, Gong Tenzuka said in a low voice, This? I can spare your life, don't make a mistake. Without knowing the depth of Dustless's strength, Gong Tenzuka didn't dare to act rashly. This guy's head is too strange. Even with my strength, I can't kill him. He's a monster. Gong Tenzuka thought about Dustless's weakness, and suddenly found that there seemed to be no weakness. He couldn't even cut through his skin. What else could he threaten him with? Spare my life. Dustless laughed, and then with a move, Canon and La Freya were frightened. Dustless suddenly grabbed the two girls' arms and pulled them into his embrace. Then he slightly opened his legs and pressed on their shoulders. Canon and La Freya both sat on Dustless's legs. I won't hand them over to you. If you don't like it, come and bite me. Wu Chen's appearance of hugging women on his left and right was extremely annoying. His unruly face was even more irritating to Tianzhong Gong. Tianzhong Gong stared at him, as if he was looking at garbage. He did not hide his ridicule. This guy is really a headache. La Freya and Canon, who were sitting on Dustless's legs, blushed in embarrassment. But with the enemy in front of them, they could only snuggle into Dustless's embrace. Gong Tenzuka's face twitched, and his expression was constipated. Dustless's proud expression seemed to be saying, So what if I bully you for not having a girlfriend? Chapter 1568. Tenzuka Gong glared at Dustless. His smiling face was asking for a beating. La Freya and Hane's Canon purposely went along with Dustless and leaned into his arms. The two goddesses were as lazy as kittens with a satisfied smile on their faces. Damned bastard. What do you take the battle with me for? Be serious. Tenzuka Gong was shocked and angry. He was being looked down upon. This guy even used him as a tool to pick up girls. You want me to be serious? With an idiot like you? Dustless did not put Amaterasu Gong in his eyes at all. His words were as unpleasant as they could be. He did not treat Amaterasu Gong as a person at all. Of course, he wasn't a human to begin with. In the end, he was just an artificial life form similar to Asteroidi. The one who created him was the so-called sage. You're courting death. After being humiliated again and again, Tenzuka Gong could not bear it anymore. He waved his hand, and countless cold steel lights were as numerous as a rainstorm. Ignoring the definition of distance, they directly shot in front of Dustless in an instant. You're always using this kind of trash move. Wuchen shook his head, his face was full of disappointment. At the same time, the dormant chakra in his body broke out, the deep Rinnegan rippled, and a visible ripple broke out. Shinra Tensei. Bang, bang, bang. All kinds of spikes were repelled by the repulsive force. Dustless, La Freya, and Kanace Cannon, who were under his protection, were unharmed. What kind of ability does this guy have? All kinds of moves, too many to count. Tenzuka Gong was depressed. He couldn't even get close to Dustless now. But, my target isn't this kid. Laughing sinisterly, Tenzuka Gong's gaze finally landed on Kanace Natsuan and La Freya. His oily green eyes were filled with playfulness, and his lips would occasionally move slightly, letting out the excited laughter of a hunter who had encountered his prey. Since you want to die so much, Dustless's eyes shot out a dazzling sharp light. His entire body turned into a flash of light and disappeared in an instant. The speed of light could not be captured, and no creature would be able to capture it. What is this? Light? Even an alchemist like Gong Tenzuka was stunned on the spot. What he saw in his eyes was a flash of super light, but he didn't know what it was. I have to retreat. This guy is too dangerous. I might even lose my life. In a brief trance, Amatsuka Gong vaguely saw Dustless's ferocious face. His whole body was cold and desperate. His dead eyes were emotionless, just like a machine. At the same time, the Tenzuka Gong felt a cold, baleful aura lock onto him. He instinctively wanted to escape, but he was shocked to find that his body was not listening to him at all. He could not move his legs at all. Damn it! Tianzhong Gong cursed loudly. He was sweating profusely. He knew that it was caused by Wu Chen's murderous aura. At the same time, the owner of the flash arrived. He glanced at Tianzhong Gong's ugly face and kicked him mercilessly. Lightspeed kick. The flash of light hit Gong Tenzuka's body with full force. His body emitted violent fluctuations. His face was hit by a powerful force and exploded into a pool of unknown liquid. Then a huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Hot air and shockwaves burned everything. The buildings on both sides of the street collapsed and disappeared completely. Fragile objects such as glass were all turned into dense sparkling fragments. Gong Tenzuka himself was even more miserable. He was sent flying dozens of meters away by Dustless's kick. He bounced on the ground like a football. His body and appearance no longer existed. His face was destroyed by Dustless's kick. Now he had turned into a pile of liquid metal. Such strength. Could it be that the fifth true ancestor has appeared in this world? Tianzhong Gong turned into flowing liquid metal. The terror of Dustless rose to an unprecedented level. This guy was so ferocious that he didn't seem like a human. I hate people who like to take hostages the most. When I meet this kind of despicable person, I will always reveal my strength to beat him or her into submission. Just like the immortal city Muayi. However, in my eyes, you are just a trash that no one wants. You are far different from the immortal city Muayi. Senpai, Jijua Shelly Hanban Sayaka, Azurewing Asakani, and Koja's sister, Koja's Nagisa, rushed to the scene of the incident. I have already dealt with this kid. You guys just arrived. The people from the Lion King organization are indeed unreliable. Choosing something like underwear can take more than 10 times more time than ordinary people. Wu Chen looked at the several women with big and small bags and complained. You guys have guts. How dare you attack us? Don't you know that this island is going to be called Dustless from now on? Hanban Sayaka, who was always the bravest, took a few steps forward. Her eyes were like torches, emitting an oppressive cold light. This guy. Wuchen rolled his eyes at Huangbansa Sayaka. His fingertips emitted a huge flash of light as he aimed at that pool of liquid. His eyes emitted endless cold light, and the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling could be heard. Forget it. If I use that here, it will cause too much of a commotion. After the energy ball condensed for more than 10 seconds, it suddenly extinguished. Under the astonished gaze of several people, Dustless finally turned around and left lazily. A living person turned a deaf ear to it, and directly ignored the Amaterasu tribute. Senpai, are you going to let that guy go? Jijua Shelley was surprised. Of course not. Don't forget that this is the city. There are too many passers-by. Also, Gong Tenzuka will come to me sooner or later. As long as Canon was around Dustless, Gong Tenzuka would continue to visit him. Jijua Shelley's worry was unnecessary. Chapter 1569. Tenzuka Gong's face looked like he had constipation. Today he came here with a lot of confidence. He thought that he could easily win the fight, but who would have thought that he would be defeated? Just you wait, I won't let this go. His face twisted violently as he glared at Dustless and the others. The cold light in his eyes seemed to imprint Dustless and the others in his heart forever. If I have the chance in the future, I will cut you into pieces. Time flew, and soon it was the next morning. Dustless's house. Why did you buy so much cat food? Do any of you have a cat? I remember that the apartment doesn't allow animals. Dustless sat on the sofa and asked lazily while eating snacks. Also, where are you going? Don't go out if you have nothing to do. You are all good mediums. Tenzuka Gong is watching you. Once you go out, he will follow you like a shadow. Taking a closer look, Asonian Blue Feather, Jijua Shelley, Sayaka Kawasaka, Nagisa, Hane's Cannon, and La Freya were all ready to go for a hike. Stop nagging. People might think that you are an old man. Hane's Cannon said disdainfully. We have so many people. Can't we beat that guy? You are underestimating us. Although we are not as strong as you, we can take care of Tenzuka Gong. Even if you look down on people, you should know when to stop. That's right. The girls nodded. Hane's Cannon looked like a big sister now. You guys. You are right. You can go wherever you want. I can't stop you. But I still need to remind you to leave as soon as possible if you encounter any danger. Dustless thought about it and felt relieved. Hane's Cannon was right. Jijua Shelley and Hane's Cannon could easily take care of Tenzuka Gong, so he didn't need to worry about it. Senior, we might not be back in the afternoon. The lunch I prepared yesterday is in the fridge. Jijua Shelley's voice came from outside the door. Dustless nodded silently. Looking at the several figures, he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. Unknowingly, he had stolen Koju's script. Let alone Blue Feather and Jijua Shelley, even Koju's sister was temporarily living in his house. It's worth mentioning that Koju is still missing. Lord Dustless. At this moment, a strange monster suddenly emerged from the ground. It was naked, and its skin was pale white. It did not have any gender. This was the white Zetsu that Dustless had specially created to make it easier for him to communicate with immortal capital Muayi. Is it done over there? Immortal City Muayi's work efficiency is very high. Putting down the snacks in his hand, Dustless's calm eyes rippled, and his killing intent surged and wreaked havoc. At this moment, in the capital of the first true ancestors' warlord domain, this place was filled with a large number of purple runes. The scale was so large that it covered the entire majestic city. This sudden scene caused the vampires to be confused. I can't use my mana. Could it be immortal capital Muayi? I thought she was captured by Dustless. But she sure has guts to come to War Monarch's domain to do something like this. This is as serious as starting a world war. In a luxurious mansion, Vatler frowned. He encountered this situation on Itagami Island as well. It was the day immortal capital Muayi escaped from her prison. Phew. At this moment, immortal capital Mua Yi was looking at the city filled with mysterious runes and curses. She was a little nervous. She was following Dustless's plan. If Dustless stood her up, immortal capital Mua Yi would have to face the wrath of War Monarch's domain alone. The first primogenitor, Forgotten War Monarch, was a true powerhouse. Even two Kojas combined wouldn't be his match. Are you trembling? Are you afraid of the first primogenitor? An indifferent voice came from beside immortal capital Mua Yi. Immortal capital Mua Yi was stunned. Her pupils contracted when she saw who it was. She asked in shock, "When did you show up?" The one who came was Dustless. "I left the flying thunder god's spell on you. I can teleport with a thought." Dustless explained casually. Dustless looked down at the luxurious city. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes. "I don't like to cause trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either. Those who offend me will die, including primogenitors." Dustless's expression was so cold that immortal capital Mua Yi thought he was a robot. He didn't have any emotions that a living being should have. War Monarch's domain has a lot of people. It's not as simple as Itagami Island. All we need to do is sink the island, and everything will be destroyed. It will take a lot of time to get rid of all of them. There were countless elite vampires in this city, and the population was in the tens of millions. Although their magic and special abilities had been removed, even if there were 10 million pigs, it would still take a few months to catch and kill them all. You don't have to worry about that. Dustless was unfazed. His body glowed with a golden light. High-density materialized chakra was released. A double-faced Kansusanu appeared and made the same hand seals as Dustless. It's enough to destroy this eyesore. Tenebrous quaking star. Chapter 1570. Immortal Wood Ayi didn't really understand Dustless's words. She looked at the golden giant, and felt a chill run down her spine. She could vaguely see the look in Dustless's eyes, and her expression changed. About a dozen seconds later, the people in the Battle King's domain were at a loss. They suddenly realized that the sky had mysteriously darkened. It was still daytime. Why did it suddenly turn dark? Speaking of which, why are there so many strange things happening recently? Who knows? Perhaps our Battle Monarch domain is so strong that even the gods are afraid of it. Perhaps the heavens are playing a joke on us, ha ha ha. That's right. The Battle Monarch domain is the strongest among the true ancestors. The people who didn't know what was going on all laughed as they looked at the black shadow in the sky. They were all bored and joking, and it just so happened that Dustless and immortal Wood Ayi heard it. The ignorant are fearless. It's not a bad thing to die happily like this. There were no ripples in his calm eyes. Wu Chen's eyes didn't have the slightest ripple. He maintained his calm from beginning to end. There was nothing to be emotional about this continent that was about to be destroyed. Everything would become history. Look, what's that? A meteorite? Damn it, how are we supposed to block that? Perhaps only the familiars of true ancestors can deal with it. Idiots, everyone has mysteriously lost their mana and abilities. How are we supposed to summon familiars? Let's run. If we get hit by that thing, we're dead for sure. A bunch of idiots. Look at the area covered by that meteorite. The entire region is under attack. We can escape if we want to, but we'll have to run to another continent. When the meteorite was infinitely close to the ground, the elites of the Battle Monarch domain all panicked. Looking at this unprecedented super meteorite, everyone was scared out of their wits. Some people's hearts were dead. They could already see the tragic scene of the Battle Monarch domain being destroyed. Damn it, it must be Dustless's doing. Only he has such a strange ability. Moreover, immortal Wood Ayi has joined forces with Dustless. Through the window, Vatler stared dumbfoundedly at the falling meteor, his heart filled with despair. In the past, when they still had mana, they could still summon familiars to defend themselves. However, now that everyone's mana had mysteriously disappeared, the vampires were no different from humans. The only thing that awaited them was death. No wonder you said that you could end this battle in an instant. Now it seems that it was indeed a one-sided slaughter. The vampires in the Battle King's domain didn't even have the ability to retaliate. Immortal Mua Yi was also gasping in shock, her chest heaving up and down. She was quite frightened by the slowly falling meteor. Her beautiful eyes widened. She tried to capture the specific range of the meteor, but found that it had no boundaries. It was as if the meteor was as big as the first true ancestors' battle monarch realm. Time to retreat. Dustless suddenly grabbed Immortal Mu Ye's waist. Just as he was about to leave, a slap came towards him. Pervert. Realizing that she was grabbed by Dustless, Immortal Mu Ye instinctively slapped him. However, in the next second, she regretted it. What if this guy got angry and killed her? Slap. After all, he had destroyed several worlds. How could Dustless be slapped by Immortal Mu Ye? He easily caught the fragrant hand that was attacking him. First of all, Heaven Trembling Star is a spell that will take the enemy down with you. You and I are also in its range. Now that the meteor is about to fall, with your speed, it will be very difficult to escape from its range. If you want to wait for death, then you can stay here and die for the Battle King's domain. Sorry, I still have things to do. Goodbye. Dustless ignored Immortal Mu Ye. Just as he was about to leave, a pair of warm arms wrapped around his waist. Turning his head, he saw that it was Immortal Capital Mu Ye, whose face was filled with awkwardness and depression. You want to die. In the end, you still don't want to die. Wuxia glanced at Celestial Wood Yi with extreme boredom. He couldn't help but shake his head. With a slight thought, he and Celestial Wood Yi disappeared from the chaotic Battle King domain. The news of the Battle King's domain being destroyed by the meteor will spread all over the world tomorrow. The vampires who lost their mana will be like food on a plate. They won't be able to resist a super meteor with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. Wu Chun and Xiantu Muai appeared in the empty room. He had set up a flying thunder god in his house, so he could return to Itagami Island from War Monarch's domain with just a thought. Where are your little lovers? Immortal Muayi looked around curiously, and found that there was no one in the room. She stayed in Dustless's room for a while. She was curious about this boss room. Without the master's permission, please do not wander around other people's houses. Especially my room. Dustless reminded her with a serious tone. He frowned and said, as for Shelley and the others, if I'm not mistaken, they might have gone to the Adillard Monastery. Cannon has a lot of kittens there. They even bought a lot of cat food before they left. I'm a little worried about them. Let's go take a look. Dustless rubbed his nose helplessly. He found that he couldn't eat or sleep well. There was a fire in his heart that he couldn't calm down. Unknowingly, his mind was affected by the departure of the girls. People change. Dustless's state of mind also changed slightly when he lived under the same roof as the girls. Chapter 1571. Immortal City. Muayi stared at Dustless in astonishment. As an expert, most people were cold and emotionless. Usually, the more powerful a person was, the colder their personality would be. Not to mention so-called friends, even if it was a child or wife, they would turn a deaf ear and abandon them at any time. Dustless could barely be considered a good boss. Is there something on my face? Sensing Immortal City Muayi staring at him, Dustless subconsciously touched his face, thinking that there was something dirty on his face. No. Immortal City Muayi gave a short answer. Why are you staring at me? Really? Dustless muttered and left the house. Before he left, he didn't forget to say, stay at home. If you go out and cause trouble, I'll be the first person Nangong Natsuyu will find trouble with. What are you afraid of? Even if you cause a big problem, no one will blame you. Immortal City Muayi turned left and right, occasionally going to Dustless's room to sit, and tossing around as if looking for something. Stop, you thief. Dustless angrily warned. This guy was too casual and didn't treat him as an outsider at all. Immortal City Muayi made a face and ignored Dustless, whose face had darkened. Can't you see that Nangong Natsuyu is very loyal to you? When I say loyal, I don't mean a simple superior and subordinate relationship. I know Natsuyu's personality. After all, we were once close friends. What are you trying to say? Dustless frowned and asked. If you have something to say, then say it. I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. You should know that compared to an unemployed person like you, I'm very busy. In any case, Natsuyu cares about you a lot. Immortal City, Mui Yi said meaningfully. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with shining eyes for a while. I really don't know what she sees in you. Boring question. Knowing that Immortal City Mui Yi was going to say something boring, Dustless immediately closed the door and left. In the quiet corridor, Silver lowered his head and thought. His relationship with Nangong Natsuyu was a bit unusual. No matter how he looked at it, they didn't look like superior and subordinate. Dustless also didn't really treat Natsuyu as his superior. Why are you in a daze? Right at this moment, a black figure appeared before his eyes. She was small and exquisite, and she was cute like a porcelain doll. However, her entire body revealed a wisp of indescribable dignity, and it caused others to be unable to help but become nervous and treat her with respect. Natsuyu? Dustless asked. Why are you looking for me? There don't seem to be any missions. Your little lovers are in trouble, Natsuyu said. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in her tone as she asked. I told you about the Tengaku tribute before. Why did you let Kanae's Cannon and the others go to the Adilad monastery? This is a serious matter. After speaking, Nangong Nayu took out her lace folding fan, as if she wanted to give Wuchen a fan. Hearing this, Dustless was speechless. He couldn't say that he went to destroy the first true ancestors' Battle King domain. Moreover, he didn't let them go to the monastery. However, the stubborn Hanban Sayaka didn't listen. Dustless couldn't do anything about it. Anyway, let's go and take a look. With a sigh, Dustless grabbed Natsuki Nangong and jumped out of the window. He flew straight to the direction of the Adilad monastery. Natsuyu didn't resist being hugged by Dustless. It was a matter of life and death. Even if she wanted to mess around, she had to choose the right time. However, a faint blush appeared on her face. Ha ha ha. What a bunch of idiots. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to catch you. Who would have thought that you would take my head? It seems that the heavens haven't abandoned me. A young man wearing a white shirt and a checkered hat laughed. This was the Adilard Monastery. Kanae's Cannon had taken care of all the stray cats here. She had planned to leave after buying cat food and feeding them. Who would have thought that she would run into Amatero Kagura? There are so many powerful psychics here. Tensia's eyes circled around the girls. He was secretly shocked. Jijua Shelley, Hanban Sayaka, La Fria, Kanae's Cannon, and even Nagisa were all good psychics. Get lost if you don't want to die. You're the one who should be worried. Facing the powerful Tenzuka Gong, Hanzakaka Sayaka chose to fight back decisively. She stood side by side with Jijua Shelley, and La Freya, who was holding the curse-type spear, was also waiting for an opportunity. Let's get down to business first. I'll deal with you later. Tian Zhonggong was not in a hurry to make a move. He walked slowly to a sculpture that looked a little old, and a deep fanaticism flashed in the depths of his eyes. Immediately, he took out a red sphere and pressed it into it. Gulp. The statue that looked as hard as iron started to move. After a few seconds, it all turned into liquid and fell to the ground. What's this? Azurewing Asakani and Kanae's Cannon were weak. When they saw the scene that defied the laws of physics, they both took a step back. Their eyes were filled with fear. You are important tools for me to resurrect that guy. I can't lose a single one of you. As long as I resurrect him, I can become a proper human again. Tensiyu smiled coldly. The unknown liquid on the ground was the spiritual blood of the sage. However, resurrecting it wasn't something that could be done easily. It would take a lot of effort. Kanae's Cannon was an important tool to resurrect the sage. Chapter 1572. A large amount of bright red blood dripped down and covered the ground. Moreover, it was extremely viscous and extremely disgusting. However, the strange thing was that there was no smell of blood. These two girls are a little troublesome, but, taking a peek at Asami Azurewing and Hanace Natsuan, who were being protected by several people, Kung Amatsuka revealed a sly smile. It was so subtle that ordinary people would not be able to catch it. Capture the hostages and force them to compromise. It's not easy to control the sage's spiritual blood. Master's consciousness is still preserved in it. I have to use pseudo-core refinement to force her out. Tenzuka Gong thought to himself. At the same time, He walked to the corner and took out the items he had prepared in advance. Tianzhong Gong, you ungrateful bastard. A stout middle-aged man scolded. The so-called tool was already a human being with a special pseudo-core inside his body. This was what Amaterasu Kung used to contaminate the sage's spiritual blood, and also to force his master out. Once the sage's spiritual blood was awakened, his master, Nina Yadalad, would also wake up. Ungrateful? At the end of the day, you're just using me. Get the hell in, director. Tenzuka Gong ignored him and kicked the stout young man into the sage's spirit blood. The transparent and viscous blood rushed over from all directions like wild cats that smelled blood. This person was instantly devoured. How treacherous! Sakura, Huangban, Sayaka, Jizhua, Shelley and the others cursed out loud. Although they didn't know the relationship between Tianzhong Gong and Jizhua, they knew each other without a doubt. Using an acquaintance as a test subject, you're really depraved. The tip of La Freya's curse gun was already aimed at Tenzuka Gong's head. Her eyes were fixed on him, as if she was looking for the right opportunity to give him a fatal blow. Who asked him to want to use me? What makes him think he can obtain the power of the sage? What a joke. This is the price he has to pay for overestimating himself. Gong Tenzuka said disdainfully. At the same time, he stared cunningly at Kanace Natsuya and Aseo Blue Feathers. Ao. At the same time, the surging blood on the ground suddenly roiled violently as if it had gone out of control. Countless sharp objects appeared and madly attacked the group. Not only were Jizhua, Shelley, and the other girls attacked, even Tungong was attacked as well. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Jizhua, Shelley and the others hadn't expected this sudden change of events. They hadn't thought that this disgusting blood could be so cruel. And all of them had suffered a merciless attack. Clang! Clang! Jizhua, Shelley, and the other girls were not weak either. The moment those sages' spirit blood darted over, they launched a fierce counterattack and launched dazzling attacks. Poochie! 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 The tentacle-like sage's spirit blood was immediately shattered. This terrifying tentacle that was as sharp as a blade was only scary on the surface. It ends here. Jizhua, Shelley, and Hanban Sayaka surrounded Tungong. Tungong stood there motionlessly, as if he had already accepted his fate. However, if someone saw the meaningful smile on his face, they would not think so. That's the end of it. Pointing at Kanace Cannon and Azurewing Aseo, Gong Amatsuka smirked. You two are strong, but your brains are average. I've already said that you two aren't my targets. Could it be? Jizhua, Shelley, and Huangban Sayaka glanced at each other, and both of them were stunned. Simultaneously, they turned around to look behind them, and the scene that greeted their eyes made them feel despair. Aseo, Azurewing, and Kanace Cannon had already been subdued by Gong Amatsuka's clone. How treacherous! Huangban Sha and Yaha abhorred evil. The weapon in her hand creaked as it reflected a cold light filled with killing intent. You still want to fight? Gong Amatsuka curled his lips and said disdainfully. You don't realize the desperate situation you're in. Put down your weapons, or I'll kill those two girls. Despicable. Jizhua Shelley's expression changed and she cursed. However, she had no choice but to put down her snow wolf. You better not fall into my hands. Hanban Sayaka's eyes were filled with ferocity. She threw down her weapon in anger, but she had no choice. They couldn't ignore Kanace Cannon and Azurewing Aseo's lives. You still dare to threaten me? So what if I'm despicable? With a cold face, Tenzuka Gong showed a victorious expression. He casually waved his hand, and all kinds of sharpness appeared. There were countless metal spikes. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. A transparent barrier as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in front of the two girls. This move. Is it him? Gong Amatsuka's eyelids twitched and he looked around. He vaguely remembered that when he was beaten up by Dustless, he used the same move. Bang. 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 The barrier that looked like it was broken by a single stab was extremely sturdy, and it easily blocked the attack. The two girls behind the barrier were unharmed. Are you looking for me? You can't escape now. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind. Tenzuo Gong shuddered and turned his head to look. Surprisingly, it was Wu Chun with a cold expression. Go to hell, asshole. Dustless's appearance immediately awakened the bad memories in Gong Amatsuka's mind. He remembered how he was beaten up by Dustless last time, and he was furious. His hand turned into a huge sword, and he swung it. Clang! Clang! Dustless's eyelids didn't even blink, and he grabbed the sword with a little force. Crack! Crack! The blade, which was completely made of compressed metal, collapsed in an instant, turning into steel fragments all over the ground. It was as simple as crushing an egg. It was very straightforward. Tenzuka Gong was annoyed. Chapter 1573. Tenzuka Gong was exasperated. His sword was not made of ordinary metal. It was made of highly compressed metal. Yet it was easily crushed by Dustless. His self-esteem was crumbling bit by bit. You don't know when to advance or retreat at all. Do you want to die so much? Dustless frowned and asked. If he didn't kill Tingong, he wouldn't be satisfied. He had never met anyone who loved to die so much. Kill me? I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Tenzuka Gong sneered. Kanace Cannon and the other psychics are mine. Then, hearing this, Wu Chen's eyelids lit up. His sight focused on Tung Zhonggong's body. A black light slowly spread out from his head. Please die. Amaterasu. The tiny black flame on his head suddenly grew a few hundred times bigger, and engulfed his entire body. Tenzuka Gong was in trouble. Ark. A heart-wrenching scream shook the heavens. Tianzhong Gong was rolling on the ground crazily. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. However, no one pitied such a despicable person. He was the one who brought this humiliation upon himself. Are you all okay? His gaze swept across the girls one by one. When Wu Chen's gaze landed on Shallow Blue Feather, he paused for a few seconds. Looking at the marks on her fair skin, he couldn't help but frown. What happened? Azure Wing was stunned. She looked at the wound on her hand and said, Strange. You were fine just now. How did you get hurt? Is it because of those tentacle monsters? Azure Wing lowered her head and pondered. She seemed to be trying to figure out where she got hurt. Some things can't be avoided. Is that Nina Yadalat? Dustless sighed in his heart. He sensed a special energy entering Azure Wing's body. However, he did not stop it. There was no harm in it. Dustless could see that the wound on Azure Wing's hand was slowly recovering. Senior, how should we deal with this guy? Jijua Shelley pointed at Tenzuka Gong and said angrily, This kind of person should be purified as soon as possible. That's right. Hanban Sayaka nodded in agreement. Buzz buzz buzz. It was also at this moment that a purple light suddenly appeared in the void, forming the pattern of a magic array. Immediately after, a large number of chains shot out from the magic array, all of them shooting towards Tenzuka Gong. Nayu. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head and said, This guy's body is a little strange. He can liquefy. This kind of thing is useless. Gulp. Sure enough, just as Dustless said, the moment the chains bound Tenzuka Gong, his body instantly collapsed and turned into a pile of liquid metal. This brat is quite troublesome. Natsuki stood on the magic array with a frown on her face. Her eyebrows were almost knitted together. She was unhappy that she had lost face in front of Dustless and the others. Keek keek. Gloomy laughter suddenly sounded, and the liquid Tianzhong Gong's body was compressed again. With your means, it's too difficult to kill me. Tung Gong laughed complacently, unusually savage. Is that so? Dustless laughed eerily a few times, and a sinister arc appeared on his face. Thump. Tenzuka Gong's heart skipped a beat, and he had a bad premonition. He then shouted, Just you wait, the next time we meet, I'll kill all of you. Next time? Hearing this, Dustless sneered and mocked mercilessly. Now, you'll have to pay a heavy price for this. He focused his gaze on Tenzuka Gong's body and activated his eye power. God's might. A huge ripple appeared on Tenzuka Gong's body, and then a black hole appeared, rapidly devouring his liquid body. Damn it, what is this? Tenzuka Gong shouted in panic, and looked at the black hole in fear. He realized that his body was about to be devoured by the black hole. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Just as Tenzuka Gong was about to be devoured, a black light suddenly appeared, and the direction it was aiming at was Tenzuka Gong's body. Boom boom boom. Tenzuka Gong's body exploded, and he turned into liquid metal all over the ground. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then an unexpected black dot descended from the sky. It was a white suit, golden hair, and a handsome face. Vattler? Dustless's calm eyes had a rare ripple, and he asked calmly. The first true ancestors' War King domain was attacked by a meteor, and 99% of the area was destroyed. Almost all the people were killed, so why aren't you dead? And, your aura seems to have gotten a lot stronger. Why am I not dead? That's a good question. Vattler's face had a smug smile, and then he laughed. Borrowing your words, if there's an exception in this world, then without a doubt, that person is me. This kid's aura is not right, he has Koju's aura. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at Vattler carefully, and he said in surprise, could it be that you devoured Koju completely? If that's the case, it's not surprising that you're still alive. You're indeed strong. You can even see that I did devour Koju. After a moment of surprise, Vattler's face was filled with passion, and he said loudly, not just Koju, but also immortal Muayi. Thanks to you and Shindu Muayi, I devoured another great person. Chapter 1574. A powerful figure? Dustless stared at Vattler. As a true ancestor, Akatsuki Koju was already a powerful figure. Judging from Vattler's arrogant tone, it was obvious that he had devoured an existence stronger than Akatsuki Koju. You didn't devour the first true ancestor, did you? Everyone stared at Vattler, tongue-tied. After devouring 2 true ancestor-level vampires in succession, it was easy to imagine Vattler's strength. He'd definitely soared to the heavens in a single bound. Ha 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 ha. As expected of my old enemy. Hearing this, Vattler laughed maniacally. His arms trembled as he shouted. Yes, thanks to you and Xian de Muaya's interference in the War King's domain, all of our powers were suppressed. All vampires, whether they were nobles or vampires from the apocalypse, were turned into ordinary humans. True ancestors were no exception. I took advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to devour the first true ancestor, and at the same time, Akatsuki Koju became my meal. Ha ha ha. At the end of his sentence, Vattler let out a maniacal laugh. Life is unpredictable. I didn't expect you to be the one to benefit. Dustless sighed. He didn't expect this to happen. Through the Tensigen, Dustless could see the majestic demonic energy in Vattler's body. After devouring 2 true ancestors, Vattler's strength had surpassed that of a true ancestor. It seems that you are the biggest winner. Dustless sighed. Ordinary people would be scared to even see a true ancestor, let alone devouring a true ancestor. Vattler's success wasn't without reason. Don't you feel like you shot yourself in the foot? Ha 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 ha. This is all thanks to you, Mr. Old Enemy. Vattler laughed maniacally. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Wu Chun, trying to catch a glimpse of pain on his face. However, Wu Chun did not move at all. There was no change in his expression. Shot myself in the foot? Are you an idiot? Wu Chun sneered unreservedly. Although your appearance is unexpected, it can barely relieve my boredom. In this boring life, only the existence of a clown like you can make me feel the joy and value of living. You. Even if you are arrogant, you should know when to stop. Do you think I am still the old me? Wrong, a big mistake. Vattler said arrogantly. As long as I want to, you won't even have time to react. Bang, bang, bang. Before Vattler finished his sentence, an explosion sounded in the air. Boom, boom, crack crack. Vattler's abdomen caved in. His abdomen was almost penetrated through his chest. Vattler's face was contorted in pain. The immense pain caused his body to lose support, and he rolled on the ground in agony. How can you defeat me? Vattler looked at the approaching black figure. His expression was cold and filled with disdain and disdain. It was as if he was looking at an insect. Vattler's pride was hurt and he roared. Sorcery, you must have used some sorcery. A mere bat. You seem to have lost your sense of measure. Do you really think the so-called true ancestors are invincible? Do you really think you can fight me after devouring 2 true ancestors? Let me tell you, even if I devour 100 true ancestors, I can still easily destroy you. You don't even know who is standing in front of you, and you still think you can defeat me? The sound of rolling thunder exploded in the boundless horizon. The surroundings were dead silent, dead silent. A few hundred years ago, I stepped into a realm you cannot imagine. To be honest, I don't even know how strong I am now. Dustless grabbed Vatler's head and stared at his caved-in abdomen. His fingertips emitted large amounts of light. Crack, crack, crack. A huge flash of light crackled, and the surrounding space twisted and was shattered by the energy ball. Then Dustless threw Vatler into the distant sky like he was throwing trash. A huge energy ball appeared along with it. Wang Su's flash. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A huge silver beam of light pierced through the sky, and the space in its path exploded, leaving a conspicuous trace as it rushed towards Vatler. Boom, boom, boom. The void flash suddenly exploded, and the blue sky was covered by a flash of light. Everyone hurriedly closed their eyes, or else they might be blinded by the light. Gulp. The girls choked and looked at Dustless in shock. It was the first time they had seen Dustless go crazy. Cold sweat flowed down their backs, and the overwhelming power made them gasp for breath. When a strong person's strength reached a certain level, they would develop a unique aura. Just like the Haushika Haki, it had a powerful deterrent force. I didn't hit him. After that kid swallowed 2 true ancestors, his strength really increased. I almost pierced his abdomen, but he could still escape. Unbelievable. Not only did his strength increase, but his body's recovery also increased. A cold voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned around and saw that it was Nagisa. No, it was more appropriate to call her Aurora. TSK. This is going to be a good show. This guy swallowed Akatsuki Koju and indirectly angered Aurora. Dustless gloated. In fact, he wanted to thank Vatler. He was worried about how to get rid of Akatsuki Koju without Aurora noticing, and now Vatler had helped him a lot. He took the initiative to take the blame for Dustless. Sure enough, male protagonists were often the best scapegoats. Chapter 1575. Dustless was quite excited. He had guessed that Vatler would kill Koju, but that was only after Koju had awakened all of his familiars. He didn't expect Vatler to be so eager to devour Koju, which indirectly angered Aurora. But, staring at the raging Aurora, Dustless hesitated. Vatler was no longer the same as before. Not only did he devour Akatsuki Koju, but he also used the power of the Dark Oath Book to devour the first true ancestor. With the power of 2 true ancestors, his strength would inevitably increase. Would Aurora be his match? Aurora, I advise you not to humiliate yourself. You're not my target. If you try to stop me, I'll let you have a taste of your familiar's power. Also, if you don't know what's good for you, I don't mind taking back your 12th familiar. Vatler was clearly not interested in Aurora. His gaze was fixed on Dustless, and the pitch-black mana bursting out of his body was almost solid. It was filled with a soul-stirring power, and its precision, range, and quantity were all greater than Aurora's. Boom, boom, boom. Aurora wasn't someone who would back down easily. Her immature body once again erupted with a burst of ice-cold magic power, and the surrounding temperature dropped by several hundred times. It became incomparably cold, and almost instantly engulfed the surrounding forest, turning them all into ice sculptures. Seriously, this guy. Dustless quickly ran to Jijua, Shelly, and the others. He opened his golden Kinsusanu to protect them. He knew that this was Aurora's familiar, the Enchantress's deep ice. Its ability was to freeze everything. How did Nagisa become like this? Blue Feather asked worriedly. In her current state, Nagisa was as cold as ice. She was like an ice goddess who didn't want anyone to get close to her. She was the complete opposite of her usual optimistic self. She was completely isolated from the world. That bone-piercing killing intent made Blue Feather feel even more fearful. Aurora probably isn't Vatler's match. Dustless shook his head. Honestly speaking, Dustless wasn't optimistic about her chances. After all, Vatler had devoured 2 primogenitors. There was no doubt that he had mana, and judging from his confident tone, he even had Koju's familiar under his control. Who ambushed me? Right at this time, Dustless suddenly felt a piercing pain at his waist. He grimaced in pain as he turned his head and scolded angrily. If you dare to pinch me next time, your buttocks will bloom. The one who ambushed Dustless without warning was Natsuki Nangong. Taking advantage of Wu Chen's carelessness, her jade hands swept towards the tender flesh of Wu Chen's waist and unceremoniously made a 360-degree turn. When did the first primogenitor's War King domain get destroyed? What's the meaning of Vatler's breath? Did you do it? Natsuki Nangong's eyes fixed on Dustless. I only killed a few stinky bats. What's there to be surprised about? Also, the most annoying thing is that Vatler, that eyesore, didn't get smashed to death by the meteor, and even devoured the first primogenitor and Koju. Why is that damned brat so lucky? Dustless was speechless. He felt that Vatler had stolen Koju's protagonist aura. You destroyed the entire Darkness Empire just like that. You're starting a war. A dangerous character like you is a cancer that will bring disaster to the world. Natsuki Nangong's chest heaved up and down. She was so shocked by the news that her worldview had collapsed. Ever since the primogenitors appeared, they were considered invincible. Now Dustless had destroyed the War King domain in the blink of an eye. Natsuki Nangong felt dizzy and her brain couldn't handle it. But I saw on TV yesterday that the War King domain was going to sign a peace treaty with other countries. Now that it's destroyed, isn't it too fast? It's impossible to destroy an entire Darkness Empire in a day. Natsuki Nangong said doubtfully. Natsuki, there's nothing to doubt. This is the truth. I was the one who destroyed the War King domain with him. I saw it with my own eyes. A melodious and lazy sound of nature drifted over. Following the source of the sound, what came into view was Xiandu Muyi, who was wearing a kimono. You too, Natsuki Nangong fell silent. She found it hard to accept. The people in the War King domain weren't idiots. They wouldn't stretch out their necks for others to slaughter. Moreover, there were at least a few 100 million people in the War King domain. How could they be wiped out in a day? No matter how unbelievable it is, the truth is the truth. Wu Chen held his head indifferently, as if it had nothing to do with him. I used the power of the Dark Oath Book to eliminate all the superpowers and magic of the War King domain. Naturally, the true ancestor was also weakened. Then Dustless summoned a giant meteorite from space. Summoned a meteor? Natsuki Nangong's eyes widened. She stared at Dustless as though she was looking at a freak. Was this something a human could do? But how did Vatler escape the meteor attack? Immortal Mua Yi could not understand. His heart was full of doubts. That's simple. Dustless had a clear mind. The Dark Oath Book is powerful and can restrict the power of a primogenite. However, after Vatler devoured the first primogenitor and Koju, his strength has surpassed the primogenitor level. Every item has its own limit, just like how my Dark Oath Book can't restrict it. I reckon that after Vatler devoured Koju and the first primogenitor, he also obtained a power greater than the Dark Oath Book. That's why it's useless against him. It's normal for him to use a power greater than a primogenitor to avoid being locked on by heaven's love. Everything had a limit, and Immortal Mu Ye's Dark Oath Book was no exception. Chapter 1576. Natsuya remained silent. She knew Xiandu Muyi well. There was no need for him to lie to her about something like this. It was impossible to hide something like this, and it would probably spread across the world by tomorrow. She stared at the calm Dustless in shock. She was 100% sure that the person who destroyed the Battle Monarch's domain was the doing of this seemingly harmless fellow. Senior, did you really destroy the first true ancestor's Battle Monarch domain? Jijua Shelley raised her voice and stood in front of Dustless with her snow wolf. You. Seeing this, Wu Chen was even more speechless. Looking at the snow cloud wolf, he asked with a headache. You're not planning to avenge the first true ancestor, are you? If that's the case, avenge? What a joke. Before Dustless could finish, Hanban Sayaka stepped out and said with hatred, the so-called vampires are all evil people who ride on the heads of humans. The destruction of the Battle Monarch domain is a blessing from the heavens. Ha 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 ha. La Freya was the most excited. She was so excited that she started dancing. La Freya's country, the kingdom of Aldija, bordered the battle monarch domain. Some conflicts were inevitable, but the kingdom of Aldija was no match for the battle monarch domain. It was inevitable that they would be bullied and threatened. Now that the enemy that had accumulated years of grievances was destroyed, of course they would be happy. After all, the other party was the powerful Empire of Darkness, second to none in terms of strength. They also had a colossal existence like the true ancestor, and countless vampires under their command. This wasn't something the Aldisha kingdom could contend against. Moi. While Dustless was feeling helpless, La Freya pursed her lips and left a light kiss on his face to show her gratitude. Seems like the true ancestor's Empire of Darkness is hated. He stared at La Freya in bewilderment. He hadn't been in this world for long, so he didn't feel much about the true ancestor. But for other humans, the true ancestor was a nightmare. If it weren't for the Treaty of Sanctum, perhaps the human race would have already ceased to exist. Boom boom boom. Bang bang bang. A fierce shockwave suddenly burst out and Agrora, who had been fighting with Vatler, was sent flying by the boundless mana. He was as weak as a kite with its string cut. Just as I expected, Vatler's strength has increased tremendously after devouring 2 primogenitors. He's even stronger than the average primogenitor. Not only that, he can also use Koja's familiars. He might even be able to use the first primogenitor's familiar. TSK. No wonder he dared to cause trouble for me. He has enough capital this time. Dustless nodded slightly. The current Vatler barely had the qualifications to be looked at in a new light. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Dustless stretched out his hand to grab Agrora as he watched her fly away. He joked, Miss Agrora, with your current ability, it seems that you're far inferior to Vatler. Who? Agrora finally calmed down after falling into Consisinu's protection. She glared at Vatler, who was laughing maniacally, and felt a sense of defeat. Dustless was speaking the truth. Vatler was no longer the same as before. His strength had increased exponentially, and he could control familiars that even Koju couldn't. Hee. Dustless lowered his head and laughed dryly. He revealed a sinister smile. Aren't you a vampire? Why don't you suck my blood? Who knows, there might be an unexpected surprise. Are you crazy? Hearing this, Nangong Natyue and the others were stunned. Just how strange was this guy? How could he take the initiative to let others suck his blood? It's a good idea, but it's useless. I'm only a consciousness now. My blood-sucking instincts have already disappeared. Agrora's eyes dimmed. That's a pity. Looks like I'll have to deal with this kid myself. Wuchen showed a disappointed expression when he heard that. Then his eyes lit up and he said, although your current strength is worthy of special treatment, you are just a bat after all. Is that so? Vatler glared at Dustless in Consisinu and shouted, I'll break your shell now. Let's see if your body is as tough as your shell. Pa pa pa. As soon as his voice fell, golden lightning swept across the void, and all of them blasted onto Sisinu. Boom boom boom. A huge roar resounded through the clouds. The unparalleled lightning was extremely powerful, and the surrounding forest was directly razed to the ground, revealing the bare, scorched earth. However, what surprised Vatler was that the golden Consisinu was unharmed. Dustless's location was like a god's domain. Even if he used everything he had, he couldn't break through the golden monster's powerful defense. Let's see how strong your shell is. Vatler's face twitched. His right arm suddenly turned black, covered with red lines, and boundless mana spread out. After devouring Koju, Vatler had gained control of Koju's familiar. Although it required a spirit medium, it was a piece of cake for Vatler. As long as he could awaken the familiar, it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. Since I'm not your match in a one-on-one battle, all of you come out. Familiars number 3, Dragon Snake Quicksilver, number 5, Lion's Gold, number 9, Twin Horn Scarlet, number 11, Aqua White Steel. Chapter 1577. Vatler roared with all his might. In front of him, 4 ferocious-looking super beasts appeared, each of them exuding a domineering aura that could shake a person's soul. Their eyes were filled with awe and veneration. Boom, boom, boom. The four vassal beasts attacked fiercely, and a fierce shockwave hit Susanoo head-on. Susanoo began to sway, and a kakaka sound could be heard. The effect of a few familiars working together is not bad. Dustless looked around and found that the miniature Susanoo wasn't strong enough to fend off the four familiars. Small cracks had already appeared on its surface. He's indeed different from a true ancestor. Is he stronger than a true ancestor? Dustless stared at Vatler curiously. The incomplete Susanoo wasn't even 1/10 as strong as the complete Susanoo, but the fact that Vatler could destroy it showed how strong he was. This is just the beginning. You underestimated me. Seeing that his attack was finally effective, Vatler shouted in a loud voice, "Familiars number 4 Silver Mist, come out as well." After saying that, more than 5 familiars appeared. It was an extremely powerful lineup. Vatler was surrounded by them. Not only that, Vatler even awakened his original snake-like familiar and brought out all of his assets. Gulp. Jijua, Shelley, and the others choked with sobs. Looking at the dozens of familiars, they felt like their brains weren't enough. Vatler was ridiculously strong. The familiars bared their fangs and looked ferocious, as if they were going to devour their prey. At the same time, the familiars under Vatler's control launched powerful attacks. Each familiar had a different ability. Colorful magic power exploded in the air, filling the air with colorful lights. Boom, 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 boom. Lightning flashed, shaking the sky. The 5th familiar, Lion's Gold, was the first to launch a powerful attack. A large number of lightning bolts fell from the sky. Roar! Not only that, but the rest of the familiars were also working well together, much better than Koju's half-baked familiars. The 9th familiar, Scarlet Feet, leaped into the air and gently tapped its feet on the ground, causing ripples to spread out. The destructive light wave was unrestrained, and finally, it eroded the incomplete Susanoo. The originally weak crack suddenly emitted a ka-ka-ka-ka sound, and the originally negligible crack became bigger and bigger. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the 5th familiar, Lion's Gold, also roared towards the sky. Dense and irregular golden lightning bolts pounced towards Susanoo's head and bombarded it with full force. Boom, boom, boom. After receiving consecutive devastating blows, the badly damaged Susanoo was finally unable to resist, and helplessly headed towards collapse. This badly damaged Susanoo was originally a dregs. It belonged to the type with thin skin, and there was a world of difference between it and a high-grade Susanoo released at full strength. This is a good opportunity. Get rid of those people for me. Dragon Snake Mercury. Vatler's eyes flashed. He waved his hand and a giant bird flew out. It opened its mouth full of fangs and bit at Dustless and the others. This is bad. This guy really knows how to cooperate. Agrora frowned. He didn't expect Vatler to be able to use the power of the 4th primogenitor so well. He was different, and more suitable than Koju to be the 4th primogenitor. You deserve praise. Dustless smiled. He looked at Vatler for a few seconds, then said coldly, "But I hate people who overestimate themselves. No one can save you this time. I will kill you." Dustless's scarlet eyes turned at full speed. Black flames danced in his eyes as he locked onto Dragon Snake Mercury. Amaterasu. The black flames were aimed at Dragon Snake Quicksilver. They thought they could burn him alive, but what happened next was unexpected. Amaterasu didn't burn the target as usual. It couldn't burn the familiar at all. It could only watch as Dragon Snake Mercury pounced at it. What's going on? The girls asked in surprise. They weren't normal people, so they could see what was going on. Dragon Snake Mercury's body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. This guy. Dustless frowned and looked at Vatler in surprise. Vatler was a battle maniac, but he was surprisingly smart. This is his 4th familiar, Silver Shell Mist. Its ability is an expanded version of the vampire's ability to turn into mist. Creatures and buildings can be turned into mist within a certain range. Everything will lose their original form and substance. This ability to turn substances into mist is one of the fastest ways to move around. Without a physical body, It also meant that Dustless's attack was useless. It was like hitting the air and would not have any effect. I told you before, don't treat me like an idiot like Koju. That kid may be a true ancestor, but if I want to kill him, it'll be a piece of cake. Vatler said proudly. Ao 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 ao. At the same time, the dragon snake's Mercury attacked rapidly. Its big mouth full of fangs opened and emitted a dense cold air. It seemed that it was going to swallow Wuchun. He's forcing me to make a big fuss. He wanted to take care of Vatler easily, but he didn't expect him to be so skillful with his familiars. Even the miniature Kinsusinu was destroyed. Let's be serious. Otherwise, Vatler will really think he's invincible. At most, this island will sink. At worst, I'll give them the warlord's domain as compensation. Chapter 1578. Dustless murmured. Hearing him, the faces of Jijua, Shelley, Nangong Nayu, and the others changed dramatically. They all stared at Dustless with gloomy faces. Don't look at me like you want to eat me alive. This guy is the one who forced me. If I don't show my true face, Vatler will really think that I'm made of mud. Dustless's face was as cold as frost. His chiseled face was filled with coldness. I also want to see if you have 8 heads, or if you have horns on your head. Vatler snorted, unwilling to be outdone. Ow ow ow. Woo woo woo. At the same time, he waved his hand and summoned several vassal beasts. Due to the size of the vassal beasts, they swayed as they walked, causing the ground to shake. Boom boom boom. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Once again, thick golden lightning descended from the sky. It was as frightening as the punishment of the heavens. Pa pa pa. Lightning bolts that were powerful enough to flatten a mountain surged around Dustless. His body was constantly being destroyed, severely ravaged by the scorching heat and lightning. However, he stood tall and didn't fall. His calm expression didn't change at all. If one looked carefully, they would be astonished to discover that although Wu Chen's body was continuously destroyed, his wounds would overflow with a warm light that rapidly healed the wounds on his body. When he was attacked by the lightning, he would be healed almost instantly. How is this possible? Vatler's mouth was wide open, his jaw almost dislocated. He stared at Dustless and subconsciously rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was hallucinating. However, after wiping his eyes, he saw an even more unbelievable scene. He said in a daze, "Is this guy immune to my lightning? Since you are immune to my attacks, then why can't I be immune to yours?" Dustless glanced at him and asked calmly, "You think you are special? Do you think you can do something that others can't? Don't be naive. Your current level. I actually reached it a few hundred years ago." Nangong Nayu and the others all had strange expressions on their faces. A few hundred years ago? Could it be that this guy was already a few hundred years old? Is he an old man? Nangong Natinyu had a strange expression on her face. Dustless was only 17 or 18 years old. Old man? Dustless's mouth twitched and he glared at Nangong Nayu. Although you can turn into mist, but... Dustless suddenly said with a strange smile. In front of absolute power, all abilities are just a joke. Boom boom boom. Dustless chuckled as he stared at the mist in the sky. The only reason you can turn into mist is because you're borrowing the power of the 4th familiar. Cloud shell. The mist it spits out can turn everything into mist. But if the mist disappears, will you still be of any use? Make my fog disappear? Vatler laughed and mocked loudly. Are you crazy? Don't say such childish words. You have to understand that the mist created by my familiar has already covered the entire island. Do you think you can make it disappear just because you want to? So what? Dustless asked casually. At the same time, he took out a slender tachi and shouted, "Bankai, tragic fire tachi!" Buzz buzz buzz. The unassuming saber immediately emitted a wisp of hot steam. Nothing else changed except that the saber became even more ancient and weathered. You think you can get rid of my mist with this stupid tachi? Dream on. Vatler curled his lips and was about to laugh when he raised his head. His expression changed drastically. In the void, a large amount of water evaporated inexplicably. The fog that covered the sky was also quickly dispersing. Suddenly the air became extremely dry. All the water in the sky was evaporating at an accelerated rate. What is going on? Jijua and the others were shocked. They were shocked to find that the water in their bodies was evaporating at an accelerated rate. Their sweat was gone with the wind. Not only that, but the surrounding wild animals, flowers, and trees all turned yellow and withered in an instant. The lush green grassland turned yellow and withered. This guy, Natsuki, stared at Dustless. She could clearly feel that all the water in the sky was evaporating and the mist was dispersing. The essence of the mist is water. If I evaporate all the water in the world, will you still be able to create this mist? The answer is no. If possible, I don't want to use Zenka no Tachi. This Zenka no Tachi is too powerful. The moment I use Bankai, all the water in the world will evaporate. Dustless explained in a soft voice. At the same time, the mist in the sky was dispersing and was being devoured by Zenka no Tachi. That's impossible. Vatler's face turned green. He could feel all the water in the world evaporating. Even the lakes around him turned into dry land. All the water sources were wiped out. Die. He calmly glanced at the 5 vassal beasts. Their true forms were completely exposed, and he swung his Zenka no Tachi at the terrified vassal beasts. Zenka no Tachi North, ashes of heaven and earth. Puchi. The saber aura that seemed as weak as a breeze immediately revealed its ferocious side. When it came into contact with the familiar beast, it didn't release any explosive flames or slash at all. It simply dismembered and devoured the familiar beast, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. One swing and one end. This was the most realistic portrayal of Zenka no Tachi. Chapter 1579. How many unbelievable abilities does this guy have? And what's with that weapon? Could it be the weapon of the gods? Vatler's face turned green as he stared at Zenka no Tachi. He couldn't hide the greed in his eyes. This weapon was too overpowered. Vatler's heart raced as he was tempted by Zenka no Tachi. He was even more excited than when he devoured the primogenitor. From the attack range, scale, and power, Zenka no Tachi was far more powerful than the familiars. It was as if the entire world was under the shadow of Zenka no Tachi. Gulp. Vatler's heart was about to jump out of his chest. That super weapon should be mine. Only someone like me can wield it. Vatler stared at the Zenka no Tachi in Dustless's hand with a pained expression as if Dustless had stolen his treasure. Did a donkey kick this guy in the head? Dustless had a strange expression on his face as he sent out another wave of Zenka no Tachi. It was normal to be greedy for Zenka no Tachi. Thinking back to when old man Yamamoto released his Zanpakuto, Dustless was also envious and jealous. All in all, Vatler's performance was within Dustless's expectations. Shoo shoo shoo. The sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the clouds. Raising his head, he saw a super hot storm sweeping over. Everything it came in contact with was turned into ashes. Zenka no Tachi North, ashes of heaven and earth. The target of the Zanpakuto was the familiar in the sky, crimson with 2 horns. It was going to crush the crimson horse like a whale. Roar, 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 roar. Needless to say, the 2-horned Shinfei would definitely not sit and wait for death. He immediately roared towards the sky. His sharp horns lightly pointed towards the void, and a wisp of energy rippled out in the horizon, attempting to stop or even destroy the blade that was attacking him. Puchi. The idea was good, but the reality was too cruel. The ripple of energy that didn't materialize was vaporized by the high temperature of Zenka no Tachi before it could reach the Zanpakuto. Aoeoeoeo. The 2-horned crimson cried out in fear, asking for help from Vatler. However, Vatler was petrified, also stunned by the ferocious Zenka no Tachi. For a moment he was frozen in place. Swish. Swish. Seeing that its master was scared silly by the enemy, the double-horned crimson quickly moved its body and waved its 4 limbs, trying to escape the lock of the saber aura. This guy was too scary. Puchi. Compared to the galloping stellar energy, the 2-horned crimson was simply too slow. It was dismembered in the blink of an eye, just like the other familiars. He did not release bursting flames, nor did he release a slash. He only erased everything that came into contact with him. Damn it. Seeing this, Vatler cursed loudly. He hadn't expected Dustless to be so terrifying. He was practically a god of death. Anything that came into contact with him would evaporate into thin air. All of you, attack together. Vatler ordered the remaining familiars to attack together. This was his last desperate attempt. Since he couldn't fight him alone, he could only order all his familiars to surround him. Laughable. Dustless shook his head in disdain, a ruthless glint in his eyes. His entire body began to glow like a scorching sun, golden flames burning fiercely. Awoo! The familiars opened their mouths. Just as they were about to swallow Dustless whole, the golden flames on Dustless's skin suddenly grew several times larger. Zanka Flame Tachi, Sunbreaker Prison Robe. The golden flames were dazzling to the extreme. The attacking familiars were instantly obliterated. Several of the familiars that had wanted to attack Dustless were instantly annihilated. The terrifying heat of over 15 million degrees pulverized everything. Zanka Flame Tachi's highest temperature was close to the core of the sun, around 15 million degrees. The familiars were burned alive before they could even get close to Dustless. You're the only one left. Dustless slowly approached Vatler, a dangerous light flickering in his eyes. Damn it. Vatler was drenched in cold sweat. He didn't dare look Dustless in the eye. He was afraid that he would fall to his knees and surrender. I won't kill you. I'll just take your soul, and then I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Before Dustless could finish, Agurola gnashed his teeth and glared at Vatler. He looked like he wanted nothing more than to skin Vatler alive. Idiot, I hope you don't piss off any more women in your next life. He glanced at Vatler with pity. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame this guy for devouring Koju and angering Agurola. He was determined to avenge Koju. Go to hell. Zanka Flame Tachi's power was suppressed to the limit. Dustless's body flashed, and under Vatler's shocked gaze, the flames swept towards his head. Poochie. Vatler's head was separated from his body. Dustless had killed him with a single slash. Letting him die so easily is too easy for this hateful guy. In my opinion, it would be better to throw him into the sea to feed the sea creatures. Agurola coldly snorted. His eyes were red, as if he was still grieving over Koju's death. Then he'll contaminate the fishes, Dustless said half-jokingly. The girls burst into laughter. However, Dustless decided to kill Vatler after careful consideration. This guy had devoured 2 primogenitors. If he did as Agurola said and fed him to the fishes, what if he revived? A primogenitor's regenerative abilities were abnormal. Dustless felt that it was safer to kill Vatler directly. Chapter 1580. Expressionlessly staring at Vatler's body, Dustless finally decided to take the final step, which was to extract his soul. The soul of a true ancestor was undeniably powerful, and there were 2 of them. In addition, Vatler himself was the monster closest to a true ancestor. Devouring them would be beneficial to Dustless. You guys go back first. Leave this place to me and Agrora. Waving his hand, Dustless signaled the others to go back. You too. Gazing at Dustless and Agrora suspiciously, Natsuki sensed something unusual. Her bright eyes swept over Dustless and Agrora, trying to find a flaw. Us too? Do you have any malicious intentions? Agurola's small face looked rather strange when she heard this. She stared at Wu Chun in a puzzled manner. I remember you guys still have school, right? It's almost 1 o'clock now. Be careful not to be late. Dustless reminded Jijua and Shelley out of kindness. Oh no, I'll let you go this time. The girls retreated in fear. For good students like them, being late for class was a serious matter. What do you plan to do? 10 seconds later, all the girls scattered and rushed to the Kaihai Academy. Only Nangong Nayu, Agurola, and Dustless were left. The one who spoke was Natsuki. She continued. Don't tell me you want to. Nangong's eyes, which were as exquisite as spring water, were filled with a strange expression. Seeing Dustless staring at Agurora's pretty face without blinking, she suddenly understood something. She said in disdain, You want to kill Koju's sister as soon as he dies? You'll even get Agrora for free. Buy one get one free business. Kid, you're quite scheming. Poochie. Hearing this, Dustless spat out a mouthful of blood. The corners of his mouth twitched. Don't think you can slander me as you wish just because you're my boss. I can sue you for slander. You should know the consequences of slandering me. Dustless stared at Natsuki. He was sure that she did it on purpose. I can revive you. Staring at Xiao Nagisa's face, Dustless knew that Agrora was the only one controlling this body. He said confidently, with my eye power, it won't be a problem to use the outer Tao, reincarnation heavenly art. Oh! Upon hearing that, Agrora only responded softly and wasn't as excited as imagined. Then he suddenly realized something urgent and asked, can we revive the ancient city? Absolutely not. Dustless refused without thinking. Resurrecting Akatsuki Koju? What a joke. That annoying vampire bat was finally dead. Who would resurrect him now? Is that so? Agrora's bright eyes clearly dimmed, without any luster to speak of. It could be seen that Koju's sudden departure was a big blow to her. I'm sure that if Koju's spirit is in heaven, he would want you to live on. Natsuki added. You can't waste his good intentions. That's right. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and sighed inwardly at how good Natsuki was at talking. He then said softly, the first true ancestor's soul, Koju's soul, and Vatler's soul have completely fused. The three of them have fused into one. That's why Vatler's strength increased explosively. Next, I'll use the same method to fuse the two of you. You mean? Agrora was stunned for a moment before asking in astonishment. You're willing to let me devour their souls? Did I hear wrongly? After devouring the souls of three powerhouses, anyone's strength will increase by leaps and bounds. You didn't hear wrongly. Looking into Agrora's eyes, Dustless calmly replied. In the end, it's yours. Vatler and the first true ancestor's souls are only incidental interest. This guy is quite open-minded. Natsuki felt a trace of admiration for Dustless's attitude. Anyone would feel a desire to possess a true ancestor's soul. Even she couldn't let go of it. Dustless's carefree attitude made Natsuki view him in a new light. In truth, this weak soul had little effect on Dustless. Let's go to Koju's mother's place to retrieve your main body. With that, the three of them left together. Their destination was Koju's mother's house, Koju's laboratory. Koju's sudden death was a great blow to his mother. Koju's mother was exceedingly sad. She even almost fainted. When she learned that Vatler had fused with the first true ancestor in Koju's soul, she knew that it was already too late. Even if she could revive Koju, he wouldn't be the same person as before. Inside the cold and deathly silent laboratory, lying on the experiment table was a pretty girl. She wasn't very old, probably between 12 to 14 years old. She had a head of gorgeous rainbow-colored hair and a pale and powerless face. This was Agrora's original body. Can such an unimaginable thing really be done? Koju's mother looked at Dustless suspiciously. Although she hated Dustless very much. Who told this guy to bully her son? But now that Koju has died, and Dustless killed Vatler, it was equivalent to avenging her son. She had a good impression of Dustless. Unimaginable thing? Reviving a person is just a small matter for me, Dustless said with a light smile, full of confidence. Staring at Agrora on the operating table, Dustless suddenly shouted and activated Rinnegan Sharingan. Outer Path, Rinnegan Technique. Chapter 1581. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Dustless. They did not expect him to have such a heaven-defying ability to bring someone back from the dead. Was this something a human could do? At the very least, none of them believed that anyone could do it. I would like to see if you are really that capable. Nangong Natsuyu placed her hands on her hips. Her expression was extremely proud, as if she was waiting for Dustless to fail, so that she could ruthlessly ridicule him. However, she was destined not to have such an opportunity. A layer of azure light covered Agrora's body. It was like a miraculous elixir that completely sunk into Agrora's body. Following that, a miraculous scene gradually occurred. Agrora's pale face gradually regained some color. Her cold body also rapidly warmed up. She could even move her fingers slightly. Can he really do it? Nangong Natsuyu looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. Her jaw almost dropped to the ground. You can't be one of the gods recorded in the Bible, right? Xiao Shunsun stared at Dustless. His sharp eyes tried to see through Dustless's essence. This is just the outer Tao, reincarnation of heaven technique. It is one of my countless abilities. There is nothing to be surprised about. Facing the astonished gazes of the others, Dustless was abnormally calm. This world is terrible. Nangong Natsuyu suddenly sighed. The first true ancestors' Battle King domain was destroyed by Dustless. Akatsuki Koking was also devoured. In short, there were too many things that happened. Now, a monstrous character like Dustless had appeared. His strength completely surpassed the so-called true ancestor. She felt that the end of the world had arrived. Ding ding. Agrora, who was on the operating table, unconsciously let out a low groan. Shortly after, under the expectant gazes of the others, she opened her watery eyes that were as pure and flawless as gemstones. Am I really resurrected? Agrora, who opened her eyes, said in disbelief. She subconsciously pinched her skin. The pain made her realize that this was not a dream. She had her own body temperature. Of course. This kind of thing is as easy as pie for me. Dustless smiled and said, I have already fused the souls of Akatsuki Koking, the first true ancestor, and Vatler into your body. I estimate that you will only need a period of time to adapt, and you will be able to obtain their full strength. Thank you. Agrora bowed sincerely. It's a small matter. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to care about it. There was no need to thank him for this kind of thing. He only consumed the eye power of the Sharingan, and it didn't have any fatal effect on himself. In that case, Nagisa will be free from now on. Xiao Shunsun was relieved. He had already lost Koju and his future depended on his daughter. It would be best if Agurora could leave Nagisa's body. After chatting for a while, Dustless and the others left Xiao Shunsun's laboratory. Agurora also left with them. She didn't have a place to stay for the time being, so she just so happened to be staying in Koju's house. In any case, Koju was already dead. At Dustless's house, Jijua and Shelley had already finished school and returned home before Dustless. When they saw Dustless and Agrora coming back together, everyone frowned and secretly admired Dustless's luck with women. Perhaps Dustless didn't realize that a large number of beautiful women had already gathered at his house. Although many of them came inexplicably, it was undeniable that everyone was now living under the same roof. La Freya, that guy can't be possessed by the peach blossom god, right? It must be because he is too strong that a lot of people want to hug his thick thigh. Hanban Sayaka was speechless. Dustless's unique charm was all attributed to the source of his strength. Since ancient times, beautiful women loved heroes. This sentence was not wrong. Especially people like Dustless who had the strength to destroy the world. They were even more popular. For example, why was Koju so popular in the original work? The fundamental reason was his identity as a true ancestor. If he was an ordinary person, no one would care about him. Shall lower your voice. If you are found out, how can I, the first princess, put my face? La Freya glared at Hanban Sayaka reproachfully, hinting her not to talk too much. Dustless was sweating profusely after the big battle during the day, and his body reeked of sweat. As soon as he got home, he went to take a bath without even eating dinner. La Freya peeked at Dustless through the gap of the door. Really, you still know that you are a princess? Do you look like a princess now? Hanban Sayaka smiled bitterly in bewilderment. As a princess, it's fine if you peeked at someone taking a bath, but you actually took pictures in secret? Where is your moral integrity? But speaking of which, where is Azurewing? I remember she was still here just now, but she didn't come home either. Hanban Sayaka looked around and suddenly found that Azurewing was missing. She couldn't help but frown. I say, in the bathroom, Dustless frowned as he stared at the woman in front of him. She was tall and slender, and some parts of her body were very well distributed. The parts that should be protruding were very prominent, and the parts that should be perky were very conspicuous. Her golden hair was like the waves of the sea, casually hanging by her waist. Her clear eyes were very direct, and had an indescribable wild beauty. Miss Azurewing, Is it appropriate for you to watch me take a bath like this? Azurewing put her hands on her hips and stared at Dustless, not caring about her naked body at all. She was very different from the usually shy Azurewing, and her eyes were very open and natural. In my eyes, it's just skin. Of course, if you think it's unfair or you're at a disadvantage, I can also take off my clothes and we can see each other naked. This tone doesn't sound like Azurewing, and the way she addressed me. Could it be that strange consciousness that entered Azurewing's body before? Hearing this strange address, Dustless frowned. He carefully stared at Azurewing and asked tentatively, "Are you that alchemist Nina Yadalak?" Chapter 1582. Cough 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 cough. Dustless felt awkward as he looked at Azurefeather, who was about to take off her clothes. He coughed a few times to stop her as he cursed her for being shameless. After all, it was Nina Yadillard who was in Azurefeather's body and not her own consciousness. Dustless was also not interested in her 2 lumps of flesh. If you think it's unfair for me to watch you bathe, then it's fair for me to take off my clothes for you to see, Nina Yadillard said proudly as she took off her clothes. However, after so many years, there are still people who know my name. Looks like I'm famous now. That's enough. Seeing that this guy was about to show his sincerity, Wuxia hurriedly climbed out of the bathtub. Ignoring his wet body, he directly put on his pajamas and stopped him in a bad mood. You have to be honest. Also, please understand that your body now belongs to Miss Lanyu. If you want to take it off yourself and not someone else's. That's true. Nina Yadillard was stunned as she scratched her head awkwardly. Thank you for reminding me. Otherwise, I would have forgotten all about it. You. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed his nose helplessly. If you have anything to say, just say it. When you turned into a red liquid and entered Azurefeather's body, I noticed it. I didn't do anything to you because I didn't think you had any ill intentions. At the same time, I hope you won't do anything stupid. Otherwise, I will kick you out of her body. Of course. Nina Yadillard felt that Dustless's words were harsh, but she wasn't angry. She knew that Dustless was telling the truth. Back then, she had been hiding in Asakash's body. She had witnessed with her own eyes how Asakash had crushed Vatler. The entire process had been a one-sided slaughter, a one-sided battle filled with malice. I didn't have a choice. Trying to lower her voice, Nina Yadillard said with a headache, "You know that Tenzuka Gong took the sage's spiritual blood. His goal is to revive the sage. Although the sage is not as terrifying as Vatler, he is still a troublesome character." What do you plan to do? Dustless asked calmly. I hope to borrow your strength to defeat him. Seeing that Dustless was not angry, Nina Yadalak relaxed and said, To tell you the truth, Tenzuka Gong was one of my former apprentices. I know what kind of person he is. That kind of crazy guy can do anything. You don't want him to hurt your friend, do you? If you just want me to kill Tenzuka Gong, I can promise you. Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He snorted coldly and said, If it wasn't for Vatler's interference and Tenzuka Gong's long legs and fast-running speed, I would have crippled that eyesore long ago. That's for the best. Nina Yadalak's heart calmed down when she heard that. She said apologetically, I didn't expect to cause so much trouble to my descendants after being dead for so many years. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to be apologetic. He was quite satisfied with Nina Yadalak's attitude. Anyway, he hated and disliked Tenzuka Gong. The next time they met, he could just kill him. It was not a problem. I heard that Shelley and Cannon are going to participate in the research in a few days. This is the best opportunity. Tenzuka Gong will definitely come when he hears about it. Dustless's words revealed a strong murderous intent. You. Nina raised her eyebrows and was speechless. Are you going to use them as bait? If there is an accident, the consequences will be unimaginable. I advise you to think twice before you act. Accident? Dustless curled his lips disapprovingly. Then he chuckled and said, Life is only beautiful when it is full of surprises. If everything goes as expected, What fun is there? Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. At the port, the cruise ship slowly sailed out of the port. Then it gradually sped up. It gradually lost its texture and turned into a tiny black dot. Such a crazy plan is really suitable for you. Nangong Natsuki held a black umbrella elegantly. The young man in casual clothes next to her was dustless. What are you afraid of? I left the warlocks of the Flying Thunder God with them. If Shelley and Cannon are in danger, I can show up at any time to help them. Dustless explained calmly. You can persuade them to be bait. You're very advanced in deceiving women. Nangong Natsuki nodded like a chick pecking at rice. She seemed to admire Dustless's methods. She even gave him a thumbs up. However, Dustless knew it was derogatory. Don't worry. That clown will definitely die in the Tiantong tribute this time. That idiot doesn't know what's good for him. He managed to escape 3 or 4 times. That brat is lucky. But where can he run to in the sea? Dustless sneered. He had already sentenced Tenzuka Gong to death in his mind. Jijua, Shelley, and Cannon were just bait. His goal was to lure Tenzuka Gong, the idiot, to take the bait. There were hundreds of thousands of people on Itagami Island. It would be difficult to find Tenzuka Gong among the sea of people. Therefore, Dustless wanted to use this opportunity to lure Tenzuka Gong. Tenzuka Gong couldn't wait to revive the sage, so he would use this opportunity to ambush Shelley and Cannon. Dustless could also get rid of this hidden rat in one fell swoop. Chapter 1583. His resolute eyes were full of coldness. Wuchen quietly stared at the cruise ship in the distance. His eyes were full of calmness. To be honest, perhaps because he was overconfident, he was not worried at all. Even if there was an accident, he could still use the outer path reincarnation technique to revive himself. Maybe that's why he was so confident. No matter what, Dustless was in an invincible position. Speaking of which, our Special Regions police force was attacked a few days ago, and we lost something important. Natsuki seemed to have thought of something and reminded. The submarine was stolen. Is that so? Hearing that, Wuchen just responded faintly. Then he turned around and left leisurely as if everything had nothing to do with him. However, the moment he turned around, a raging red light flashed in his eyes. If I'm not wrong, it should be Amatsuka Gong's doing. Wuchen left while muttering something. Wuchen's lips curled into a smile, as if he had succeeded in his plot. Aha! That damn pervert finally got careless this time. I thought that he would protect those 2 little girls at all times. Finally, I got the chance. Looking at Dustless leaving safely, Amatsuka Gong smiled crazily. He was really unlucky these days. Everything was well prepared. Only with the existence of Wuchen, Tianzhong Gong did not dare to take half a step into the thunder pool. Who let the disparity in strength make him stop at a glance? Now that Dustless was finally angry with Jijua Shelley and Hane's Cannon, Amatsuka Gong was very excited. Buzz buzz buzz. The golden skull in his hand glowed brightly as if urging Amatsuka Gong to hurry up. Don't rush me. I will take a boat and follow them. I hope you will keep your promise then. Amatsuka Gong's face twisted with excitement. He sneaked out of the port and sneaked into the place where he hid the submarine. Will that guy really come? Looking at the white clouds in the sky and the warm sunlight, Hane's Cannon closed her eyes and stared at the ocean in the distance. She seemed to be looking for Amatsuka Gong. It should be. Seniors, Dustless's predictions are rarely wrong. Jijua Shelley nodded slightly. She was carrying a black bag, which contained the snow cloud wolf. Let's go eat first. Jijua Shelley chuckled. After finding that there was nothing unexpected, she dragged Kanan to have lunch with her. However, the peaceful atmosphere did not last long, as an accident soon occurred. Boom boom boom. The cruise ship suddenly shook violently, followed by a huge explosion. Bang. Jijua Shelley and Hane's Cannon were caught off guard. Jijua Shelley was fine, after all, she was a cultivator, but Hane's Cannon was different. Her legs immediately turned red and swollen, and she could no longer move. Who did it? Jijua Shelley scanned the surrounding area with her eyes, like tidewater. However, to her disappointment, there was nothing above the sea. Nothing had attacked them. The threat is coming from underwater, Kanace Cannon guessed. Aye. That white-haired kid suddenly became so smart. What a surprise! An arrogant voice came from the sky, and a man wearing a white shirt and a checkered hat entered their sight. It was Amatsuka, whose face was twisted with malice. It took me a lot of effort to hunt you two little kittens. Compensate me with your lives, and I will forgive your crimes. Amatsuka laughed maniacally. Where did this guy come from? Jijua Shelley looked at the bottom of the ship and saw an army green submarine. She immediately understood what was going on, and her delicate face became colder. You attacked us with a torpedo from a submarine, and you don't care about the lives of others. You are indeed a lunatic. Jijua Shelley said in an unfriendly tone. She had already taken out the snow cloud wolf. Do researchers carry weapons? Sword wizard, you are so careful. Amatsuka looked at the snow cloud wolf and frowned. He was surprised by Jijua Shelley's action. That's because an indifferent voice resounded in the sky. Amatsuka heard the voice that he didn't want to hear the most. His proud old face suddenly turned green, then blue, then white. It was very interesting. Although it is a scientific research, it is normal for accidents to happen. To deal with a clown like you, I asked her to wear it secretly. Do you understand now? I've been waiting for you. Dow Breaker number 90, Black Coffin. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black light from the sky was cruel and merciless, and it directly crushed Amatsuka. Although he realized the danger and tried to dodge, he was still inevitably torn into pieces by the number 90 Dow Breaker. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Tianzhong's body was instantly torn apart, turning into a pile of scrap metal. It was very miserable. It was cut into pieces by the black blade, as miserable as tofu. Idiot, I only let you steal the submarine on purpose. Do you really think you're so smart that you're an unparalleled genius in scheming? By the way, this so-called scientific research, I'm sure you understand now. It's just a trap to lure you into it. You think your plan has succeeded. Tell me, are you a pig? Hearing what Dustless said, Amatsuka was stunned. He stared at Dustless, who was beaming with joy, and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Cough cough, sorry there was a power outage at home today. Chapter 1584. This kid has a good body. Lin Fan stared at Amatsuka. It was too hard for this guy to be his enemy. With Dustless's current power level, Amatsuka wouldn't be able to compete with Dustless even if he was 100 years weaker. However, everyone had their own unique way of living. Perhaps Amatsuka unique ability to recover after being smashed was his unique ability. Just barely. Dustless gave a decent answer. You. Looking at Wuxia, who was so close to him, Tenzuka eyes were about to crack. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. The majestic killing intent that he had accumulated spread out like a tide. So this is all part of your plan? Trying to lure me out? Amatsuka tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. His face looked like he was constipated. No wonder his right eye kept twitching these days. Dustless had tricked him. That's right. There are so many people on Itagami Island. It's not easy to find someone. Dustless told him the truth. Looking at Amatsuka pale face, Lin Fan was happy. This fat rat had been hiding for so long. And now he was willing to come out and die. You want to kill me? Not so fast. With a ruthless determination in his eyes, Tenzuka turned his gaze to the others. There was no other way. Dustless, this cheating player, was too terrifying as an enemy. He could only win by attacking others. Unavoidably, his gaze landed on GMO Shelley and Yi Seixia in the end. Although GMO Shelley was also very strong, but compared to Dustless, if this guy could be an enemy, he would be too cute. Although GMO Shelley was also a thorny rose, but to Tenzuka it was no different from spring. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Amatsuka gathered explosive power under his feet and dove towards GMO Shelley. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. His speed was so fast that it was like a gust of wind. One could only see the tail but not the head of the dragon. Die. His hand condensed into a huge metal blade. and his twisted face looked extremely scary. When he was a few meters away from Jijua Shelley, Gong Tenzuka suddenly leaped up and chopped towards Kanase Natsuya with his shiny blade. What a despicable fellow! Jijua Shelley was infuriated. She did not expect Tenzuka Gong to be so despicable. He had purposely attacked her, but his real target was Kanase Cannon, who was so weak. What worried Jijua Shelley the most was that Amatsuka Gong had attacked too quickly, and she did not have the time to help Cannon. Cannon was about to be captured by Amatsuka Gong. The world is degenerating day by day. If I remember correctly, you're just an artificial life form. Seriously, you're obviously created by humans, but you're playing tricks in front of humans. What a joke! A light voice came. Dustless glanced at him coldly. With a thought, Tenzuka Gong's body suddenly went out of control. Damn it! Tenzuka Gong was furious. Kanase Cannon was right in front of him, but he could not move an inch. A strong gravitational force made him unable to resist. Wanxiang Heaven's Pull. With a slight push, Tenzuka Gong's body flew over. Heaven's Cloud Sword. At the same time, a golden light flashed in Dustless's hand, and a straight sword was formed in an instant. Staring at Tenzuka Gong's head, Dustless raised his blade and hacked down mercilessly. Puchi! Tenzuka Gong's head was chopped off by the blade. However, the split body turned into liquid metal and reassembled under the shocked gazes of Jijua Shelley and Kanase Cannon. Tenzuka Gong, who was killed by Dustless, was restored to his original state. What kind of monster is this guy? Jijua Shelley was shocked. Such a heaven-defying skill meant that he had an immortal body. Hee. Tenzuka Gong laughed viciously. I am a perfect life form. You want to kill me? You can only dream about it. Idiot. Hearing him, Dustless curled his lip disdainfully and said sarcastically, Your dream is to become a human being, right? No, not a human being. In your mind, you are a human being, right? Of course. Tenzuka Gong nodded proudly. As long as I bring Sage back to life, he will give me back the other half of his body, and I will be a human being again. Idiot. Dustless sneered again when he heard that and said, Could it be that you haven't noticed it yourself? Your ability is not human. After all, you are just an artificial life form. You can never become a human being. Bullsh *T. Tenzuka Gong was enraged. His heart was hurt, and he looked especially ferocious. He yelled hysterically, As long as I bring Sage back to life, he will give me back the other half of his body. Forget it. There is no point in talking nonsense. Let's finish you. Dustless stared at Tenzuka Gong's body, and his eyes suddenly turned cold. Finish me? Tenzuka Gong murmured. He looked at Dustless with disdain, and looked at Dustless with disdain as well. It was not that he was confident. Even if his body was broken, it could be repaired without limit, which meant that he was almost immortal. Clearing his throat, Gong Amatsuka said loudly, No one. However, before he could finish, he felt a piercing pain all over his body. A black flame quickly devoured him, and within a second he was revived. Tensho. Ah. So hot. A painful voice came out of Tenzuka Gong's body. He was lying on the ground and rolling crazily. His voice was filled with pain, and both his body and mind were severely damaged. Chapter 1585. Gong Tenzuka screamed hysterically, but no one cared about him. Who asked him to be so despicable? He deserved to be burned by Amaterasu. Gong Tenzuka was tossing and turning in the black flames, screaming miserably. Amaterasu will slowly devour. His body separated from his body? Dustless frowned. He noticed that Gong Tenzuka's body had turned into liquid metal. Then a large amount of liquid was secreted out of his body. His clothes were covered by the black flames. Just like a clone, another Gong Tenzuka was slowly forming. These days, seeing the situation, Dustless sighed lightly, knowing that he failed again. You're just a weak little insect, but your ability is so novel and refined. You're a weirdo, but there's a world of difference between you and ordinary people. Dustless sounded like he was praising Gong Tenzuka, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Hearing this, Tung Zhong Gong snorted coldly. In his heart, he knew that Wuchen was mocking him for being useless in disguise. Taking a closer look, Tenzuo Gong was in an incomparably miserable state. Although he had not died, he had been ravaged to the point that he did not look like a human anymore. His face was completely different, and his entire body was filled with the smell of burnt metal. The pungent smell made people frown and feel extremely uncomfortable. "I will take revenge on you," Gong Tenzuka swore. At the same time, he waved his hand and countless spikes shot out. He knew that it was useless against Dustless, so he decided to attack Kanace instead. She was the weakest among them. Who else could he bully if not Gong Tenzuka? Shoo shoo shoo. Looking at the incoming light, Kanace Cannon's eyes flashed with fear. She subconsciously took a few steps back. After all, she was just an ordinary human. Despicable rat. When Wuchen saw this, he could not help but be filled with murderous intent. Seeing Tenzuka Gong's smug expression, this brat probably really thought that he could not do anything to him, and could only helplessly stare at him. His way of thinking was simply too ignorant. Dustless raised his right arm, and aimed his palm at Kanace. He activated his gravitational force and grabbed her. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Clang 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 clang. All of the Amaterasu tributes attacks landed on the deck of the ship. Kanace Cannon had already landed behind Dustless, and escaped the merciless attacks of the Amaterasu tribute. "I'll let you enjoy a move that only super experts can experience. TSKs. You're lucky." The one who died the worst by his hands was Vatler. Dustless's eyes were as sharp as a knife, full of hostility. He decisively took out a red tachi. Buzz buzz buzz. The blade was simple and unadorned, and it was filled with an ancient aura. Before the tachi could erupt with its own deterrent power, an indescribable heat swept through the sky. Bankai Remnant Flame Tachi. Dustless mercilessly unleashed Zanka no Tachi, and a wisp of hot steam immediately emerged from the blade. Then the moisture in the air instantly disappeared, and the water stains on the sea also began to evaporate at an accelerated rate. Not only that, but everything in the surroundings also began to evaporate into nothingness. What's going on? Amaterasu Tribute screamed in horror. He found that his body was gradually shrinking and slowly disappearing. This inexplicable feeling made him break out in cold sweat. He subconsciously looked at Dustless and asked, "Did you do this?" The essence of Zanka no Tachi is 15 million degrees Celsius of spiritual pressure. Do you think you can still survive under 15 million degrees Celsius? Everything will disappear. Damn it. Tenzuka Gong cursed. The moment the heat appeared, his body disappeared without a trace. He was completely vaporized by the horrifying heat. If Dustless did not deliberately avoid the ship, he would also have instantly disappeared into nothingness. Clang 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 clang. At this moment, a golden skull fell from the sky. It was extremely dazzling, as if it was made of pure gold. "You're the culprit, right?" Dustless stared at the golden skull and asked calmly. Cough cough cough. A strange sound came, and the golden skull suddenly flashed with a gorgeous light. Then, a hazy shadow rushed out of the skull, and the dazzling light made everyone close their eyes. "Why do you resist the great me? You're just an imperfect life form, and yet you want to resist the perfect me. This is treason, an unforgivable crime." The golden shadow spoke in human language, full of arrogance and arrogance. "You call yourself a perfect life form? Ridiculous. You need the help of others to resurrect, and you dare to say that you're perfect? Sure enough, like master, like servant. Amaterasu Tribute is a retard, and it's all because of you." Dustless sneered. He knew that the culprit had come to the surface. The sage. Retard. The golden halo twitched a few times and said angrily, "You, a lowly life form, can't understand my greatness at all. Even if this planet is destroyed without food, oxygen, and water, I can still survive. So that's why? You think you're a perfect life form? Superior to others?" Dustless heard this and laughed involuntarily. If it was so simple and perfect, then he had encountered countless perfect life forms, and he was one of them. Without food, oxygen, and water, it was just a trivial matter for him. "It's useless to explain my greatness to a lowly life form like you. You will never understand. The sage was too lazy to talk nonsense. His body, which was just a shadow, turned from nothingness to reality, and became a dazzling golden body. If I sell it, it must be worth a lot of money. Looking at that dazzling golden body, Dustless's subconscious words made the sage's head swell. Chapter 1586. Blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemy. This is blasphemy to the great me. The golden sage was furious. He didn't expect Dustless to be so arrogant and audacious. Looking at Dustless's eyes, the golden sage's hair stood on end. He could read something else from those eyes. If he sold it, it would be worth a lot of money. You damned bastard, I'm going to kill you. The sage opened his mouth full of fangs and roared. A dazzling and destructive beam of light was formed in an instant. You two stay away. Dustless turned his head and glanced at Jijua Shelley and Canon Hanace. That beam of light is useless against me, but you two might still be severely injured. Understood. The two women nodded wisely. Then they turned around and left. They ran to a relatively safe place to hide. Boom, boom, boom. The beam of light expanded to its limit and covered Dustless. His whole body turned silver, and shone so brightly that no one dared to look at him directly. Bring it on. Dustless crooked his finger. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was provocation. He stared at the sage as if he was looking at a street rat. He didn't even try to hide the mockery in his eyes. Die. The sage was furious. He opened his mouth and released a powerful attack. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Thick beams of light fell from the sky towards Dustless, who was on the deck. The size of the beam was so exaggerated that the void shook slightly as if it could collapse at any time. Ha ha. The sage's mouth was full of fangs. He laughed as if victory was within his grasp. This beam of light is powerful enough to flatten a mountain. I know you are strong, but if you are hit by it, you will die for sure. Ha ha ha. And you will never dodge it. The sage laughed arrogantly as if he had seen through Dustless's thoughts. However, his laughter, which was similar to the sound of metal colliding, was really unflattering. This gold twinkle is very smart. Dustless stared at Sage in surprise. If he dodged, the beam would hit the entire ship, and all the students, Kanace Cannon, and Jijua Shelley would fall into the water. Then let's just blast it away. Dustless raised his fist as he looked up at the blinding light that was charging towards him. Humph, do you think your fists are made of iron? A sneer came from the sage's throat. Not only was the power of the falling light beam astonishing, but it also carried a scorching attack. If one touched it with their bare hands, their entire arm could be burned off at any time. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless's eyes slightly solidified, staring at the light falling down, whispering softly, "Armament hockey hardening." Boom boom boom. Then Dustless decisively punched out at the right time. Bang bang bang. The falling light beam was stopped in an instant. All the light was blocked by Dustless's fist, and he himself was motionless, and there was no discomfort on his handsome cheeks. Gulp. Sage was shocked and choked for a moment. Looking at the light that was caught by Dustless, he was shocked and said, "Is this guy's fist really made of iron? Go back to where you came from." Glancing coldly at Sage, Dustless's right fist exerted a little force, and the stalemate light instantly collapsed and flew straight towards Sage's head. "It's back." Sage's mouth twitched when he saw this. He increased the horsepower of his legs and planned to escape, but it was too late. Dustless used an even more powerful force to fight back the light. Boom 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 boom. Sage's body was swallowed by the light, and immediately burst like a rainstorm, and the ground was full of dark red liquid. "You can come out now." At the same time, Dustless suddenly took out a miniature doll, which was Nina Yadilak's original body. She quickly rushed into the liquid and quickly absorbed it. "Damn it, I'm perfect, and I can't lose to a flawed human." Sage's golden body was shattered by his own move, but he also had the ability to repair it infinitely. His sharp golden eyes were gloomy, and his body turned red. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. "Go to hell." Then a blue energy ball popped out, and Dustless said coldly, Wangsu's flash. Boom boom boom. Sage's body, which had just recovered, was destroyed again by Dustless's finger, and the golden light scattered over the blue sea. The person who made you is not bad. On the sea surface, the broken pieces of Sage gathered again, and then, under Dustless's gaze, they finally merged into one, and Sage emerged from the water again, safe and sound. Although I can't kill you, but... At this point, Sage's gloomy smile became strange. Similarly, it seems that you can't kill me either. However, if you continue to exhaust me like this, you'll be the unlucky one. I forgot to tell you before, my stamina is also unlimited. The sage proudly narrated and proudly raised his disgusting head. Idiot. Dustless shook his head speechlessly and said sarcastically, When you say this, at least look at the situation under your feet, or I'll be very troubled. Under my feet? Sage was stunned when he heard this, and looked at Dustless in confusion. Then he lowered his head subconsciously, and his huge eyes suddenly froze, and a very bad feeling swept across his heart. Chapter 1587. What the hell is this? The sage roared in shock, his voice full of fear. He was shocked to find that below him was a black hole similar to the abyss of the universe. He did not know how deep it was, but the sage knew that if he fell in, he would not be able to get out. I must not be swallowed by this thing. As a perfect being, how can I be swallowed so easily? Absolutely not. I cannot tolerate this situation. The sage struggled with all his might as he roared like a madman. His golden eyes revealed a trace of fear that penetrated deep into his soul. As a perfect being, how could he die? Absolutely not. Idiot, when did I say I was going to swallow you? You still have some value. Dustless laughed and said, The reason you can still talk like a lunatic is because of my mercy. Otherwise, with the power of God's might, and my eye power, you would have already drifted to the abyss of the universe. You still want me to thank you for your kindness? Sage asked angrily. At the same time, he felt that the black hole's gravitational force was much weaker, and he could move his body freely. Of course not. Shaking his finger, Dustless said coldly, Even so, you still have to die, but in a different way. In any case, it can be considered as me reusing trash. Reusing trash? Sage's golden mouth twitched and he shouted, The trash you are talking about is me? This is blasphemy. Swish. 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 The sage opened his mouth and shot out a powerful ray of light. The silver ray of light went straight for Dustless's face. Boom. 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 The thick light covered Dustless's eyes. In his anger, Sage increased the power of this move to the limit. It was even bigger and looked unavoidable. This kind of trash move again? Out of boredom, Wuxia raised his arm again. Disappear for me. Bang. 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 Dustless slapped down lightly, and the light that was rushing over was sent flying by Dustless. Just like before, it changed its trajectory. Damn you. Sage's eyes widened, and he sadly found that his move was flying toward him again. Boom boom boom. Sage was both angry and helpless. Faced with his own attack, he was helpless as well. His entire body was blown to smithereens, turning into a pool of fresh red blood. You can absorb him now. Dustless glanced at the pocket-sized figure and said casually, This person was Nina Yadillard. The red liquid on the ground was nourishment for her. Thank you. Nina Yadillard glanced at Dustless gratefully before diving into the red liquid like a fish in water. Her originally pocket-sized body also became slightly larger. With this cycle, she would soon be able to return to her normal appearance. No wonder you didn't kill me. Staring at the gradually growing Nina Yadillard, Sage understood Dustless's evil intentions. This guy was not being merciful, he wanted to squeeze this woman dry. Don't even think about it. The sage roared, and a ray of light shot towards Nina Yadillard. Isn't it better to just disappear obediently? Why do you have to resist? Dustless shook his head as he turned into a flash of light, and appeared in front of Nina Yadillard. Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. A thicker flash of light shot out. Due to the angle, the two beams of light inevitably intertwined. Tear him apart. Looking at the light in Dustless's hand, Sage roared. The light beam shattered in the end. But why can't the perfect me be better than him? The sage gloomily muttered to himself. One of them had been torn apart, but that miserable person wasn't Dustless. It was the perfect him. Boom, boom, boom. The body that had been repaired several times exploded again, turning into a pool of dark red liquid. As time passed, Nina Yadillard gradually recovered. On the other hand, Sage shrunk as he was continuously absorbed. The majestic sage sadly became a worm, and Dustless used God's might to devour him. And that was the end of Sage's life. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. How boring. Dustless lazily hugged his head as he looked at the distant city through the transparent window of his apartment. He watched TV to pass the time. Akatsuki Koju is dead, Vatler is dead, and the first primogenitor's War King domain has been swept away. All his enemies have been eliminated by Dustless, so naturally, he was bored. This kind of lazy life is quite comfortable, but as time goes on, it is inevitable that he will get bored. Bang! At that moment, there was a sudden explosion. A gust of cold wind invaded the warm room. Dustless looked at the source of the sound and saw Natsuki Minamiya. What's the result? Dustless asked curiously. They all agreed and are willing to obey your orders. Even the Lion King organization has chosen to submit to you. Natsuki gave Dustless a satisfactory answer. The entire Itagami Island is willing to break away from the Japanese government. TSK, I didn't expect you to be so popular. Those stubborn bastards are willing to follow your orders. They are treating you like a king. Just a day ago, Wuxia requested for Itagami Island to become independent and cut off all ties with Japan. Wuxia thought that the Lion King organization would be against it, but who would have thought that they would agree to it? Treating me like a king? Bullshit. They are afraid of being destroyed by me. Dustless sneered. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Nangong Natsuki's sudden words stunned him. Chapter 1588. Let's go on a date, Dustless. Nangong Natsuyu said seriously with narrowed eyes. Date. Dustless pondered over this word for a moment. He was stunned for a few seconds before he caught the faint smile on Natsuki's face. He quickly realized that this was a trap. I refuse. Dustless glanced at Natsuki with a "don't try to fool me" expression. Why would Natsuki want to go on a date with him? Dustless shook his head. The probability was 0. She was not a love-struck fool. She must be plotting something if she wanted to go on a date with him. Are you not a man? Natsuki was stunned for a moment before she became angry. She had already given him enough face by asking him on a date. She did not expect him to refuse. Am I a man or not? Are you sure you want to prove it? Dustless blinked innocently and asked. He then began to take off his clothes. Bastard, what are you doing? Natsuki was shocked. She quickly turned her back to Dustless. Put your clothes on the boat. Dustless laughed dryly. He shrugged and said helplessly. You asked me if I am a man or not. I will take off my clothes to prove it to you. You. Natsuki was furious. She angrily stomped her feet. She turned her head and stared at Dustless. Her eyes were filled with tears. Is there something wrong with Natsuki's head? Seeing this scene, Dustless's face was filled with a strange expression. Looking at the sobbing Nangong Natsuyu, he felt as if his worldview had collapsed. Nangong Natsuyu, this strong woman, was crying? This joke was not funny at all. Cough, cough, cough. Sorry, I was rude just now. I agreed to go on a date with you. Wuxia finally compromised. He glanced at Nangong Nayu and frowned. At the same time he wrinkled his nose. He smelled a scent from Nangong Nayu that he had never smelled before. Strange. Why does she have my scent on her? Staring at Nangong Natsuki, Wuxia's expression became even more strange. He stared at the girl's dark eyes. They were like the abyss of the universe that attracted his attention. Hey, let's go. Hearing that Wuxia agreed to go on a date, Nangong Nayu's face immediately lit up with joy. She quickly pulled Wuxia's arm and skipped away. She was completely different from the usual Nangong Nayu, who was inflexible and calm. Really? Are you kidding me? I still want to sleep a little longer. Yawning tiredly, Wuchen could only change his clothes and go out to play with her. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Inside the elevator, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stared at Nangong Natsuyu. She was like a completely different person. Her personality was the opposite of her usual self. She gave off the feeling of a moody witch. Miss Natsuki, where do you want to go? Looking at the scorching sun on the street, Dustless was dispirited. He wanted to take an afternoon nap under the scorching sun, not to mention going shopping with Natsuki. Let's just walk around. Grabbing Dustless's arm, the girl skipped away. She was extremely happy. But before she could take 2 steps, she was blocked by some ignorant people. Hey Gigolo, let go of my hand. Let me do it. A few figures suddenly appeared from a nearby alley. They reeked of alcohol and made people want to vomit. They had bracelets that represented the demon race. Their strength was definitely not ordinary. If you get out of my way, I can pretend that nothing happened. Dustless expressionlessly glanced at them. He was not interested in these small fries. But Natsuki's stubborn temper flared up. Get down here and kowtow to admit your mistake. Natsuki's face darkened as she coldly warned. Even her eyes were filled with a red light. Otherwise you will regret it. When did this girl become so arrogant? Dustless stared at Natsuki in astonishment. He chose to remain silent and watch the show. Little girl, are you looking for death? You look quite pretty. Apologize to me and I will let bygones be bygones. The hooligan who suddenly appeared stared at Natsuki's delicate face. His hand was already reaching out to grab her. You're looking for death. Natsuki lifted her small foot and swept it out. The hooligan was sent flying. The force behind the kick was extremely ferocious. Ka-ka-ka sounds could be heard. His bones were definitely broken. You broke his bones with a kick? That brat is a demon race. His physique is stronger than normal humans. Natsuki is not a melee fighter. But Dustless was stunned. Bastard, you dare to hit our boss? Everyone, let's teach him a lesson. Several hoodlums were furious. They took out steel pipes, iron rods, and other things and rushed over. They all smashed towards Nangong Nayu. You guys can kill each other. Natsuki coldly said. She blinked her eyes and the hooligans started to beat each other. Let's go, Chinkuan. Natsuki pulled Dustless's hand to leave, but she found that she couldn't pull him away. She turned her head and looked at him in confusion. Dustless was as cold as ice. Mississippi. Although I don't know what happened, you are not Natsuki. The taijutsu you used to break that hooligan's bones was armament hockey. Secondly, it should be genjutsu that controlled them to fight each other. Although I don't know how you did it, I clearly felt the fluctuation of chakra. Please give me a reasonable explanation. Dustless coldly stared at Natsuki. No wonder this girl felt strange. She was completely different from the usual Natsuki. It turned out that she was an imposter. Ah. Sure enough, I was seen through. Natsuki shrugged helplessly. Her tone was somewhat mocking. This girl. Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He glared at Nangong Nayu. Her tone was the same as his, tangled. Chapter 1589. The young girl's eyes were filled with ridicule, and a trace of teasing flowed within them. Her cute and exquisite face was suffused with 2 faint blushes, and she was extremely beautiful. In this world, chakra and armament hockey are exclusive to me, and no one has any reason to learn them, so why do you know how to use them? Speaking of this, Dustless paused and said, So please tell me your identity and origin, otherwise, it will be difficult for you to escape from my hands. Phew. As his voice fell, Dustless grabbed the girl's white arm. Let me go. The girl's face was stiff, and her angry look was quite cute and charming. Crystal tears squeezed out of her eyes again, and she looked like she was about to cry. Humph. But this time it obviously didn't work. Dustless just snorted and chose to turn a blind eye. His face was firm, and he wasn't confused by her at all. At the same time, Dustless began to think about the origin of the girl. Koju, that guy seems to have a similar experience as me. Dustless suddenly thought of Koju. Koju's daughter, Koju, also tricked him like this. Could it be? As if he understood something. Dustless's face twitched fiercely, and his calm eyes rolled up stormy waves, and he stared at the girl's eyes in disbelief. This kind of thing can be followed. Koju's daughter ran from the future to the present. If this is the case, it can also perfectly explain the origin of the girl's chakra and armament haki. After all, Dustless is the only one on this planet who knows armament haki and chakra, so the identity of the girl is actually on the verge of being revealed. You finally understand. The girl showed an unhappy expression. She seemed to be very dissatisfied that Dustless guessed her identity. Cough. I'm sorry. Dustless blushed, and he let go of the girl's hand and asked awkwardly. What's your name? My name is Natsuki. The girl who looked exactly like Natsuki replied. Good name. Dustless nodded slightly upon hearing this. His previous gloomy mood was swept away. He stared at the girl's crystalline pupils and after hesitating for a while he asked expectantly, Your father? Is it me? When he said this, Dustless looked depressed. After all, he hadn't made any progress with Natsuki Nangong, and they hadn't reached the point of having a child yet. However, Dustless had no choice but to think in that direction due to the strange girl in front of him. Take a guess. The girl named Moonless revealed a sly smile. Let me guess. Dustless rolled his eyes and said angrily, Although I don't know how you did it, but I am the only person on this planet who has chakra, and armament haki is also the same. The answer is obvious, and you and Natsuki look exactly the same. Dustless's face twitched as he sighed inwardly at the impermanence of the world. Tell me, why are you looking for me? My future daughter. Dustless put on a different face, which was completely different from the shameless expression just now. Huh, daughter. The girl blinked her eyes and said sarcastically, Then I want to ask this father. A father who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter and asks his daughter to verify whether he is a man or not. This kind of guy should go to hell. Dustless opened his mouth and found that he was speechless, and his face was red with shame. Knowing that the girl was indirectly insulting him, he quickly waved his hand to cover up. You don't know, you have to understand that the father didn't do it on purpose. You have to understand him. I'll let you go this time. The girl with delicate appearance put her hands on her hips, and then looked directly at Dustless's eyes, thinking, It's really disappointing, it's a bit different from what I imagined. Then what did you imagine me to be like? Dustless calmly asked, and at the same time his brows were slightly wrinkled, and his eyes were looking at the distant sky, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. He could feel an evil aura of disaster coming at him at high speed. At least I won't be a strange uncle who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter. The girl's face was very serious. Poochie. Dustless vomited blood and glared at her. It seemed that this girl still couldn't get over this, and was still thinking about such a trivial matter. But, to be honest, I'm also very surprised. Staring at the girl's delicate face, Dustless shook his head lightly. Her height and appearance were almost the same as Natsuki Nangong, so it was no wonder that he recognized her wrongly. In fact, if she didn't use chakra, Dustless would still think that this girl was Natsuki Nangong. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment in the depths of the blue void, a hysterical roar suddenly sounded. Looking up, it was a ferocious-looking evil dragon. Of course, it could also turn into a flying lizard. Is that why you're here? Pointing at the evil dragon in the depths of the void, Dustless stroked his chin and said proudly, Since you can inherit my chakra, you can't be weak. You shouldn't be so weak that you can't even deal with a dragon. Dustless only glanced at the evil dragon, and then ignored it. There was nothing special about it, and there was nothing worthy of his attention. Of course there are other things. The girl's face turned serious. You too. At this moment an untimely voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head, and saw a girl dressed in gothic lowly clothing. Although she was young, her aura was very strong, and there was an inexplicable majesty about her. Yo Natsuki. Dustless waved his hand in greeting. He knew that this was the real Natsuki Nangong, and the girl just now was just an imposter. Or rather, she was the daughter of Dustless and Natsuki Nangong, although her arrival was a bit strange. Chapter 1590. Nangong Natwa looked at herself, who looked exactly the same as her. Her expression was one of shock. Her delicate little face was filled with astonishment. She was also extremely shocked by the young lady in front of her. You are. However, in some aspects, Natsuki was much more flexible than Dustless. She stared at the girl, and after a while, a wisp of wisdom flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have seen through the girl's identity, and then she fell silent. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing the three of them fall silent, Dustless had no choice but to stand up and cough twice. There was nothing he could do about it. It was inevitable that men would suffer losses sometimes. Roar, 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 roar. Deep in the sky, a ferocious-looking dragon descended from the sky. Its appearance was quite ferocious, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. There was even saliva dripping from its mouth. Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. The young girl coldly raised her right hand. Her pale palm contained a trace of destructive power. At the same time, her black eyes that were as deep as onyx also showed a drastic change. A pair of mysterious blue and white eyes appeared in the girl's eyes. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he muttered to himself, "How surprising, it seems that she inherited the Tensigen from me." Boom, boom, boom. The turbulent repulsive force erupted at full speed, and the explosive impact hit the dragon that was fluttering its wings in the void. Roar, 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 roar. Under the violent impact, the dragon howled in extreme pain and was blasted back dozens of meters. There was a clear dent in its abdomen, and scarlet blood flowed out of its mouth. This attack forced the dragon to retreat again and again. How is the future me? Don't tell me I'm dead. Dustless asked expectantly. After all, Akatsuki Koju's daughter, Akatsuki Koju, came from the future, and at that time, Akatsuki Koju also died because of the Saint Annihilation. Future? You just destroyed this planet. The girl flicked her beautiful black hair and gave an answer that made Natsuki speechless. As expected, it was a mistake to let you live. Natsuki glared at Dustless. There was a hint of blame between her brows, and she was also quite conflicted. She looked at the girl who looked exactly like her with a strange expression. Natsuki felt the connection between their bloodlines, and the technique she used was Dustless's. It was obvious what it meant. Thinking of this, Natsuki's face was filled with embarrassment and a rare shyness. Destroying a planet? Dustless pondered. Natsuki's words, but in his eyes it was normal. After all, this wasn't the only planet that he destroyed. Roar, 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 roar. Of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, Natsuki. Moreover, it opened its mouth and spat out thick flames at Wuchun and the others. Boom, 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 boom. Natsuki, 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 of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, 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 Natsuki. Really? Dustless sighed in the midst of the flames. The golden light was especially dazzling under the cover of the flames. It was golden and resplendent, emitting a holy and warm light. Kensusuni? The girl said the name of the technique. She was very familiar with it. Disappear. Dustless raised his head to look at the sky and indifferently glanced at the black evil dragon. Then his eye energy spun rapidly. A strand of black flame instantly consumed the black evil dragon. Tensho. The giant dragon's huge fat body was instantly annihilated by the flames. It was pulled into the boundless sea of fire, and the black netherworld fire swallowed it up along with its bones. Ayo, ayo, ayo. The evil dragon screamed in pain until it finally choked and disappeared. As expected of my dad. Seeing this, the girl gave Dustless a thumbs up. Her face was full of praise and a smile, as if she was saying, "I'm not as good as you. This little girl can't be an imposter, right?" Dustless was speechless. He subconsciously looked at Nangong Natsuki. She also had an expression that said, "This has nothing to do with me." However, this girl who looked exactly like Nangong Natsuki had a normal expression. "I have something to tell you." At this moment, The girl suddenly moved closer to Dustless and said, "If you want to leave this world in the future, remember to bring everyone with you." Everyone. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He blurted out, "Are you talking about Azurewing and the others? Who else do you think I'm talking about? You don't seem to know anyone else in this world, right?" The girl rolled her eyes and asked, "This planet will be destroyed in the future. I'm sure you know what this means." Dustless nodded slightly. If the planet was destroyed, it meant that all living things would wither away. Every blade of grass and tree on this planet would vanish completely. That's a must. He nodded resolutely. It would be fine if this planet was safe and sound. If it was destroyed, then he could only bring them away. As for the reason, Dustless didn't ask. There was no decisive future. Everything was changed by human factors. "Aren't you curious about how this planet will be destroyed?" The girl was somewhat depressed. Dustless's reaction to such shocking news was actually mediocre. He was even indifferent. She was quite disappointed. "Who knows?" Dustless shrugged and said, "The future is also unreliable. In fact, the moment you appeared, the future changed. That so-called reason will also change." In the original work, Koju's daughter, Koju, used this method to change the ending of Koju's death. Thus, it didn't matter what the future was like. It would change anyway. My journey in this world is about to come to an end. Looking up at the sky, Dustless's lazy eyes were filled with expectation. Chapter 1591. Inside the system world. The sky was clear and cloudless. White clouds floated lazily in the sky. The green mountains and clear waters were the only real world in this world. The black-haired young man sighed under the shade of a tree. A woman's thoughts can't be easily guessed. Really, compared to Itagami Island, the system world was more comprehensive. The scenery was more beautiful, and the climate was more suitable for human habitation. At first, Wuchen thought that if he brought Nangong Nayu and the others away, they would fiercely object. Wuchen had even prepared an illusion. However, the world was unpredictable. When the girls heard that they were going to play in another world, they agreed without hesitation. Before leaving, Dustless once again destroyed the world of bloodthirsty frenzy. "You are really greedy." Ling Air, the incarnation of the system consciousness, frowned. When he left, Dustless used one of the strongest illusions, the infinite Tsukuyomi, to kill the whole world and used the descent of the divine tree world to absorb everyone's vitality. Every time he left, Wuchen would do this to enhance his strength. Although the means were a bit evil, Wuchen, who was used to doing bad things, also kept calm. So what? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Being weak is a sin. Dustless smiled perfunctorily and said, "Everything ends here. Now, we can change to the next world. This is good too. I can use infinite Tsukuyomi and divine tree world descent to absorb the world. My strength will increase too. I hope I can go to a world with a high level of power." Dustless prayed. Ling Er couldn't control this kind of thing. In fact, it was randomly chosen. Where to go depended entirely on Dustless's personal luck. Kacha. Ling Er's seemingly weak arm gently tore apart the void, and a shocking black hole appeared. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a spatial tunnel. How violent! Wuchen shook his head and glanced at her calmly. Then he plunged into the cave. In a strange world, the weather was clear and very hot. However, Wuchen's first impression was that it was very cold. He subconsciously opened his eyes and saw the world in the water. F***ck. Why is she so good at picking a place? Next time, she might as well put me in lava. Wuchen opened his mouth and scolded loudly. Suddenly, a large amount of lake water invaded his lungs. He tried to mobilize his strength, but he helplessly discovered that perhaps because he had just crossed over, his body was soft and had no strength at all. Splash! At the same time, a huge wave came from the lake. Dustless looked for the source. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. She had aqua blue hair and aqua blue eyes. Even her eyebrows were aqua blue. Her fair face was as delicate as mutton fat jade. Her bright eyes were full of vigor as she pounced on Wuxia. Her figure was exceptionally hot. She was wearing a pure white tight-fitting uniform. Her curvaceous figure was particularly eye-catching. This girl is so familiar, Dustless whispered to himself. He secretly searched for the joy of the person. Suddenly, he thought of an almost identical figure. His body suddenly felt cold. Is death bad luck? Why did I meet this evil star? First I fell into the water. Now I inexplicably became the prey of this woman. Dustless felt cold. He had goosebumps all over his body. Death was a famous sadist. Her greatest interest was to torture others. Although Dustless had no grudges with her, this girl came to save him inexplicably. It showed that there was an unknown relationship. In short, Dustless was in the sight of his death. Don't run. There was a faint voice from the bottom of the water. Dustless looked up. It turned out to be his death, who was close at hand. This girl was strong and good at swimming. She caught Dustless almost instantly. She held him in her arms and then rushed to the surface of the water. Although I don't know what happened, I can be sure that she is looking for me for absolutely no good thing. Dustless's expression was full of depression. Just at that moment, he keenly caught the coldness in Esteth's eyes. Plop! In an instant, Esteth took Dustless out of the water, jumped to the shore very vigorously, and threw Dustless on the ground. She pointed at Dustless and said, "You want to die before I torture you? Dream on. I still have countless kinds of torture to try. This time, I will try it on your body." Ha! Hearing this, Dustless was suddenly dumbfounded and asked with a speechless face, "That? Although I am very grateful to you for saving me, did you get the wrong person? Miss, I don't know you." Dustless was confused by this sudden change. He just crossed into this world and did not offend his death. It was too sad to be a scapegoat for no reason. By the way, there seemed to be a body under the sea just now. That guy looked a little like me. Did his death make a mistake? Dustless bowed his head and thought carefully about the development of the matter. Soon he found a big problem. He stared at his death speechlessly. It was estimated that this girl had mistaken him for someone else. I saw a person who looked 70% like me at the bottom of the sea. The guy you said may be dead. If you don't believe me, you can have a look. Chapter 1592. However, these words had no effect. Esteth just stared at Dustless coldly. Her cold pupils did not change at all. She just stared at him quietly. More and more coldness and killing intent flowed from her body. 3 beasts. After a moment of silence, Esteth called the names of the 3 subordinates. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 black shadows appeared behind her in an instant. They were wearing the same clothes, and they all knelt on one knee very respectfully. They looked at Esteth with a look of worship and fanaticism. It was as if they saw God. This guy said that he was not the prince. Torture him well, let him admit it, and then let him die in pain. How dare he say that I mistook him for someone else? Esteth turned her head and left. She sat on the chair prepared in advance and watched quietly. It seemed that Dustless was not qualified for her to do anything. Prince. Dustless heard the words and his eyes flashed with surprise. After a few seconds of contemplation, he was enlightened. He secretly guessed. I'm afraid that Esteth thought I was the bullshit prince. Unfortunately, that guy is dead. Dustless could be 100% sure that the body in the deepest part of the river was the prince's. He was not the prince, but his appearance was somewhat similar. He was afraid that Esteth had mistaken him for someone else. Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry. This is the order of the minister, who asked you to do the right thing. As a result, the minister was forced to ask Esteth for help and asked us to kill you secretly. You have to understand that we are still fighting with the alien race. For you, Esteth secretly came back. Your Royal Highness really deserves to die. The blonde kid squatted and looked at Dustless. His face was full of ridicule and murderous intent. This guy seems to be called Neo. Glancing at him faintly, Dustless's mind waned. After a while, his strength had recovered 80 to 90%. Now his whole body was full of strength. Esteth. This guy doesn't seem to be the prince. The silver-haired middle-aged man bowed and respectfully said to Esteth, "They wear different clothes and are different in age. I have seen the prince before, and this guy should be two different people. We can barely be considered acquaintances." Dustless glanced at the middle-aged man in surprise. He was also quite familiar with him. This man was called Leva, who used to be Bulat's former boss, the former general of the empire who was both wise and brave. He was framed and arrested because he refused to bribe. Later, he was rescued by Esteth and had been loyal to her ever since. "Is that so?" Hearing this, Esteth nodded slightly and looked at Dustless quietly. She asked, "Did you see other people's bodies under the riverbed? Tell me the exact location, and I'll let you go if you're right." "Let me go?" Dustless frowned. Esteth seemed to be too proud. Obviously, she caught the wrong person, but she didn't apologize. Now she said that she would let him go. She was too arrogant. "I'm sorry." Dustless turned his head and did not look at Esteth. He said loudly, "I am forgetful. You are threatening me again. I suddenly forgot the place where the guy died." The tone of this guy's words. The three beasts heard the words and their mouths were twitching wildly. They stared at Dustless with horrified eyes. Their big eyes seemed to be about to fall out, which gave people a very shocking feeling. The dull eyes were obviously saying, "If you want to die, just say it. There is no need to be tortured to death by Esteth." "You guy." Not only the three beasts were stunned, but Esteth was also full of astonishment. Her eyes were dull and empty gray, and lost the shrewd brilliance of the past. Interesting. Esteth, who came back to her senses, had a strange light in her beautiful eyes. She looked at Dustless curiously and asked calmly, "Are you forgetful? Do you need me to help you think?" "Really?" Dustless was surprised when he heard the words. He quickly opened his mouth and pointed to the depths of his throat and said, "If it's possible, thank you very much. I just drank a big mouthful of seawater. Now please help me suck it all out with artificial respiration. After that, I will take you to find the body of the prince." Ha 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 ha. After Dustless said this, there was a sound of gnashing teeth. Looking at the source of the sound, what came into view was a ferocious-looking brat. "Nyo, what did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Say it again if you have the guts." Nyo was full of anger, and his eyes were fixed on Dustless. His sharp eyes seemed to be looking for a suitable place to cut open Dustless's stomach. Catching the raging coldness in the depths of Nyo's eyes, Dustless sneered and shouted, "Are you an idiot? I will let that woman give me artificial respiration and suck the water out of my stomach. If you understand, get out of my way, you little retard. You are looking for death." The golden-haired brat was so irritated that he almost vomited blood. At that moment, he attacked with his immature fist. This weak fist seemed to be extremely fragile, but it was definitely enough to easily smash human bones. For the three beasts trio, Esteth was a godlike existence. She was even bigger than the emperor of this country. Now Dustless actually let their idol do artificial respiration. How could they tolerate it? You don't know how to live. His eyelids twitched slightly, and a surge of energy broke out of his body. The irresistible repulsive force suddenly repelled him. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. The brat who was caught off guard was immediately sent flying, rolling and crawling more than 10 meters away. Only then did he lie on the ground awkwardly. His head was close to the ground, and his buttocks were high up. It was extremely funny. Chapter 1593. Nu. Leva and Didos stared at Nu, who was embarrassed. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Their expressions were extremely exaggerated as they locked on Dustless, who was standing still. Their heads were a little dizzy. "Pa, it hurts." Didos slapped himself. The burning pain made him understand that this was not a dream. "This is... How did he do it?" Taigu? Esteth's watery eyes also flashed with a strong surprise. The moment just now happened too fast. Everything was just a flash of lightning. She had no extra time to react. When she realized it, Nu had already been blown away. "I can be sure now that you are not the prince." Esteth sat elegantly on the chair, and crossed her legs very lazily. The prince that the minister told me is just an ordinary political enemy. He has no strength and is just an ordinary human. Although Nu's strength is ordinary, she can definitely beat an ordinary human, so you should not be the prince. Is it? Dustless heard the words and wiped the sweat stains, then patted off the dust on his body. There was a hot temperature in his body. After the wet clothes were dried, he whispered, "Since this is the case, then it is a misunderstanding. Goodbye." "Wait." The elegant voice came again. Dustless turned his head to look. It was Death who was smiling. "Anything else?" Wuxia asked. He felt a cold and gloomy aura locking onto him, as if he was being stared at by a hungry beast. The high-density evil spirit could even make people have the illusion that they were drowning in a sea of blood. However, Dustless maintained shock from start to finish, and was not affected. "This guy can ignore my murderous spirit?" There were ripples in the calm eyes. Death's bored expression gradually became interested. "But you hit my subordinates, don't you think you should apologize?" "Apologize? You want me to apologize?" Dustless heard the words and sneered. "I can tell you, not to mention your subordinates, even if I hit you, do you want me to apologize? Don't even think about it." Reckless fool. Leva and Didos looked at each other angrily. They looked at each other and attacked from different directions. They were all strong people who followed Death to fight. Although they were not strong enough to fight 100 people, at least 1 against 10 was absolutely no problem. "You bugs." Silver frowned slightly, and some hostility flashed through his eyes. He revealed his scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan, and then glanced at the 2 people attacking him with his deep Sharingan. Plop! The 2 of them were severely injured in an instant. They fell to the ground with pale faces. Wuchen didn't even move his hands. Death was surprised when she saw this, and she immediately asked, "Leva, Didos, you 2 are getting more and more useless. There's no need to scold the 2 of them. That's because you'll end up the same way if you run into me. In fact, I don't even need to do anything. I can easily deal with you." The scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan stared at Death. Dustless said calmly, "So please don't humiliate yourself, Madam Death." At this time, Leva's voice sounded with difficulty. He stared at Dustless's eyes with fear and said in horror, "This guy is not an ordinary human being. His eyes are very strange. It seems to be something like illusion, but it's very real. Is his consciousness still awake?" Staring at Leva with surprise, Dustless was quite surprised. He immediately looked at his right hand that was already bloody and knotted. This guy is very decisive. He uses pain to get rid of the illusion. He has rich fighting experience. "Are you also a person with Taigu ability?" Looking at Dustless's eyes, Death was confused. She did not remember that there was such a Taigu as eyes. The 48 Taigu of the Empire had accurate records. This ability had never been heard of. "Taigu. I don't need that ability. It's superfluous for me." Dustless shook his head. Then he turned and left regardless of Death's idea. "What kind of place is this?" Dustless looked around and found that there were mountains around. There was no one. It was estimated that it was a very remote place. He could not help but curse in his mind. "Why do I encounter this annoying trifling thing every time I travel?" Wuchen smiled bitterly. He didn't have the slightest connection with that deceitful prince, and they didn't have any relationship. It was just that their appearances were somewhat similar. Whoosh! At this time, it suddenly snowed in the sunny day. The sunlight could be reflected under the sunshine. Looking carefully, a large number of ice dregs were swept up in the sky, followed by the cold wind as expected. "You!" The footsteps stopped. Dustless looked at the empty space in front of him. Even if she did not turn her head to look deliberately, she knew that Death was coming. It seemed that she did not intend to let Dustless leave. "I am very curious about your ability. Stay and be my subordinate. No matter what your identity is, I can let you get glory and wealth, gold and treasures. There are only things you can't think of, but nothing you can't get." Death raised her voice and tempted. In this era where people's lives were as cheap as grass, it was lucky to be able to have a full meal. She believed that Dustless would give up the darkness for the light. "Be your subordinate? It sounds good. Turning his head and looking at his death, Dustless joked. If you can send me to the position of the emperor, I can barely be your subordinate. You are looking for death. His death was as cold as frost. The murderous intent that had been accumulated for a long time burst out, freezing the flowers and trees around. A layer of ice on the ground suddenly attacked Dustless, trying to turn him into a crystal ice sculpture. I may be your natural enemy. You are good at using ice, and I am good at playing with fire. Fate is really cruel. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.